The dress mock-up appeared in my inbox at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right between a client invoice and a spam email about weight loss tea. I almost scrolled past it, but Catherine's subject line caught my eye. "What do you think of this?" The image loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, like a nightmare materializing in real time. White silk, sweetheart neckline, delicate lace appliques trailing down the bodice. My wedding dress. The one I'd spent months designing. The one still hanging in its garment bag at the back of my closet. Tags intact. Except this wasn't my dress anymore. This was a replica, with subtle alterations. A deeper V in the back, slightly fuller skirt. And there in the email text, "Think this will look good on me? Getting so excited for June." My coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against my desk. Hot liquid splashed across my laptop keyboard, but I barely noticed. The world had narrowed to those words on my screen, each one a fresh betrayal. Everything okay in there?" Grace's voice floated in from the gallery's main room. My sister, always checking on me. "Fine," I called back, my voice steadier than it had any right to be. "Just knocked something over." I grabbed paper towels from my desk drawer, mechanically blotting coffee from my keyboard while my mind raced. Catherine was my best friend. Had been since college, when we'd bonded over terrible art history lectures and midnight pizza runs. She'd helped me plan my wedding to Thomas, for God's sake. Had stood there with tears in her eyes when he proposed. The proposal. 8 months ago now. Thomas down on one knee in the sculpture garden, where we'd had our first date, Catherine hiding nearby to take photos. She'd hugged me so tightly afterward, whispered how happy she was for us. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. "Dinner tonight? That new Thai place you wanted to try?" I stared at his message, at the little heart emoji he'd added at the end. How many times had he texted Catherine today? How long had they been? No, I was being paranoid. There had to be an explanation. Catherine was an art curator like me. Maybe she'd just fallen in love with the design. Maybe she'd asked Thomas if it was okay to use it as inspiration. Maybe. Another email notification popped up. Catherine again. "BTW. The venue you and Thomas originally booked became available. The June cancellation. We grabbed it right away. Meant to be, right?" The same venue. My venue. Our venue. I opened my browser, fingers trembling as I typed in the wedding website I'd created months ago. The site I hadn't looked at since Thomas and I decided to postpone, citing family issues and timing. The site I'd meant to take down. Error 404. Page not found. With numb fingers, I opened my banking app. The joint account Thomas and I had started for wedding expenses was still there, but the balance was different. New transactions I didn't recognize. Payments to vendors, our vendors, dating back weeks. "Cadence?" Grace appeared in my office doorway, frowning at the coffee mess. "You sure you're okay? You look like you've seen a—" "When did you last talk to Catherine?" I interrupted. Maybe last week? She mentioned something about being super busy with wedding stuff. Oh, shit. Grace's eyes went wide as she connected the dots. "Oh, Katie. No." "Check your email," I said quietly. "I bet you anything there's a save the date in there somewhere. For June." Grace pulled out her phone. I watched her face as she scrolled, saw the exact moment she found it. The color drained from her cheeks. "I'm going to kill her," she whispered. "Both of them. I'm actually going to—" "Don't." I turned back to my computer, closed the email with its mockery of silk and lace, opened a fresh document instead. "I have a better idea." My hands had stopped shaking. The initial shock was wearing off, leaving something colder, clearer. The gallery had taught me that the right presentation was everything, that timing was crucial, that sometimes the most devastating impact came not from what you showed, but from what you waited to reveal. My phone buzzed again. Thomas, following up about dinner. I picked it up, typed back. "Can't wait, 7:30? Added a heart emoji of my own. Grace made a strangled sound. "How can you—" "Because," I said, already making notes, already seeing the possibilities unfold. They think they know exactly how this story ends, and I'm going to let them think that. right up until the moment I show them how wrong they are. I looked up at my sister, managed a smile that felt like broken glass. After all, every good curator knows the most memorable exhibitions are the ones that surprise their audience. I made it through dinner with Thomas somehow. Sat across from him at that trendy Thai place, watching him eat pad Thai like everything was normal. Like he hadn't stolen my entire future and handed it to my best friend with a bow on top. "You're quiet tonight," he said, reaching for my hand across the table. I let him take it, fighting the urge to recoil. His fingers felt foreign now, like they belonged to a stranger. In a way, they did. Just tired, work stuff. I forced a smile, withdrew my hand to take a sip of wine. "Actually, I ran into Nadine today. She mentioned Catherine's been really busy lately." Something flickered in his eyes, so brief I almost missed it. Almost. "Oh yeah?" His voice was carefully casual. Too casual. "Wedding planning, apparently." I watched him over the rim of my glass. "Funny, she hasn't mentioned anything to me about seeing someone." He coughed, dabbed his mouth with his napkin. "You know Catherine, always playing things close to the chest." I thought about the email sitting in my inbox, about my wedding dress wrapped around my former best friend's body, about playing things close to the chest. "True," I said, "though you'd think she'd tell her best friend about getting engaged." The waiter appeared then, saving Thomas from having to respond. I watched him order another beer, noticed how his hand trembled slightly as he handed over the menu. Good, let him sweat. Back home, I waited until I heard his shower running before I started digging. His laptop was password protected, but I knew all his passwords. Had known them for years. Another piece of trust he'd weaponized against me. It didn't take long to find the evidence. Email threads going back months. Hotel reservations. Photos I wished I could unsee. But it was a document dated 3 weeks after our engagement that made my blood run cold. A lease agreement. Thomas and Catherine's names, side by side. For an apartment across town. Starting date, 7 months ago. The shower shut off. I quickly closed everything, wiped the browser history, returned the laptop exactly as I'd found it. When Thomas came to bed, I pretended to be asleep. I waited until his breathing evened out before slipping away to the guest room. My hands shook as I called Grace. "They've been living together," I whispered when she picked up. "Since before we postponed the wedding. All those nights he was working late or out with the guys. He was with her, in their apartment." "Jesus Christ!" Grace's voice crackled with rage. "What are you going to do?" I stared out the window at the city lights, at all the other lives unfolding in warm yellow squares. "Remember that charity auction Catherine's organizing? The one next month? The big gallery fundraiser?" "Yeah, why?" "Because I just found something interesting in their lease agreement. Something that could blow everything wide open." I touched the window, watched my reflection smile grimly back at me. "But I need your help. And Nicholas's." "Your lawyer friend? Katie, what are you planning?" "Justice," I said softly. "Or maybe revenge. At this point, is there really a difference?" The line went quiet. Then, "Whatever you need, I'm in." After we hung up, I pulled up the email Catherine had sent, stared at my wedding dress, transformed into her victory flag. She'd changed the neckline, added beading where there had been clean lines, corrupted something pure into something else entirely. Just like our friendship. My phone lit up with a text from Thomas. "Missing you in here. Come to bed?" I typed back, "Just finishing some work. Be there soon." Another lie in a house built from them. I opened my laptop, pulled up the gallery's donor database, started cross-referencing names with the lease agreement I'd photographed. Catherine had always been meticulous about keeping her professional and personal lives separate. Had always insisted on it, actually. Now I knew why. Because there it was. The smoking gun I needed. The thread that, when pulled, would unravel everything they'd built on the foundation of my broken trust. Catherine's carefully constructed wall between personal and professional was about to come crashing down. And the best part? She'd handed me the weapon herself, hidden in plain sight in that lease agreement. All I had to do was wait for the perfect moment to use it. I closed my laptop, feeling calmer than I had all day. Tomorrow, I'd call Nicholas, start putting the pieces in place. But tonight, I walked back to our bedroom. No, his bedroom now. Slid under the covers next to the stranger wearing my fiancé's face. Let him pull me close, even as my mind raced with possibilities. "Everything okay?" he murmured sleepily. "Perfect," I whispered back. "Everything's absolutely perfect." And for the first time since seeing that email, I wasn't entirely lying. Nicholas's office always smelled like old books and coffee. Today, the familiar scent did nothing to calm my nerves as I spread the documents across his desk. "This is..." He adjusted his glasses, frowning at the lease agreement. "Interesting. Very interesting." "Interesting enough to work with?" I leaned forward, trying to read his expression. The conflict of interest is clear. Catherine approved gallery funds for renovations on a building where she secretly held a personal lease. That's a serious ethical breach. He tapped his pen against the desk. "But Cadence, are you sure you want to go this route? Once we start this process..." "They're using my venue, my dress, my entire wedding, Nicholas. They're literally stealing my life and rewriting me out of it." "I understand. But revenge isn't always yacht." A knock interrupted us. His secretary poked her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent call from the gallery board." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible. The board meeting isn't until next week." "Emergency session," Nicholas said, already reaching for his phone. "Give us a minute?" I stepped into the hallway, pressed my ear against the door. Could only make out fragments. Serious allegations, financial impropriety, immediate review. When Nicholas called me back in, his face was grim. "They know." "What? How?" "Someone tipped off the board about potential misconduct. They're launching a full audit of all gallery transactions from the past year." My hands went cold. "Catherine?" "No." "Thomas?" The room tilted sideways. Of course. He must have seen me on his laptop last night, must have figured out what I'd found. "He's trying to get ahead of it," Nicholas said quietly. "Control the narrative. If Catherine comes under investigation, everything else might come out too. Including their affair, including the fact that they'd been planning this for months." My phone buzzed, Grace calling. I let it go to voicemail. Couldn't deal with more bad news right now. "What do we do?" Nicholas gathered the documents, handed them back to me. "We adapt. They're expecting a financial attack, so we give them something else entirely." "What do you mean?" "The charity auction next month. It's Catherine's big event, right? Her chance to impress the major donors?" I nodded slowly, starting to see where he was going. "So we wait, let the audit happen, let them think they've dodged the bullet. Then..." My phone buzzed again. Grace, again. This time I answered. "Katie, thank God! You need to check Instagram, right now." I pulled up the app, felt the blood drain from my face. There it was, posted an hour ago. Catherine and Thomas, matching coffee cups, matching smiles. The caption, "Wedding planning with this one. Can't wait to share our special day with everyone." June bride. The comments were already rolling in. Congratulations. Heart emojis. Questions about the venue, the date. Questions about me. "They're going public," I whispered. "They're actually going public with this." "There's more," Grace said. "Mom just called. Apparently, Catherine sent save the dates to our entire family, including Gran. Our grandmother, who'd given me her vintage pearl necklace last Christmas. "For your wedding day," she'd said, beaming. "Every bride needs something borrowed." Something inside me snapped. "Nicholas," I said, my voice steady despite the roaring in my ears. "The auction. What exactly did you have in mind?" He outlined the plan. With each detail, I felt my resolve harden. "It's risky," he warned. "If it backfires..." "I don't care anymore." I stood up, gathering my things. "They want to play happy couples on social media? Fine. Let them have their moment." Grace was still on the phone. "What are you going to do?" I thought about Catherine's Instagram post. about Thomas's careful maneuvering with the board, about how they thought they had everything under control. I'm going to congratulate them, I said. Publicly, enthusiastically. I'm going to be the biggest supporter of their perfect little love story. You're what? Because that's what they're afraid of, isn't it? Me making a scene, going nuclear? They've planned for that. I smiled, though no one could see it. But they haven't planned for this. After leaving Nicholas's office, I pulled up Instagram, liked their photo, left a comment full of hearts and exclamation points. Then I texted Catherine directly. Just saw the news. We have so much to catch up on. Lunch tomorrow? My treat. We can talk about the auction too. I have some ideas I think you'll love. Her response came quickly. Really? I mean, yes, absolutely. I could practically feel her relief through the phone, her certainty that she'd won. Good. Let her think that. Let them both think that. After all, the best exhibitions always tell a story, and this one was just getting started. Lunch with Catherine felt like performing surgery on myself without anesthesia. We sat at our usual cafe, the one where we'd spent countless Saturdays planning my wedding, and now I watched her stir her coffee with the same hands that had stolen my life. I can't tell you how relieved I am, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I was so worried you'd be upset. I squeezed back, ignoring the bile rising in my throat. How could I be? You're my best friend. Her smile faltered slightly. About Thomas. You don't have to explain. I waved it away, the perfect picture of understanding. Sometimes these things just happen, right? She relaxed visibly, bought the performance completely. Of course she did. She'd never been able to tell when I was lying. Not like I could always tell with her. So, the auction, I said brightly. I was thinking about that Rothman piece you're featuring, the one with the hidden signature. Her eyes lit up. Yes! It's incredible, isn't it? The way he concealed his identity for years, painting under a different name. Until someone finally exposed the truth, I finished. Must have been quite the scandal when it all came out. Something flickered across her face. Awareness, concern, but disappeared just as quickly. Actually, about the auction. We're making some changes to the donor list. Oh? Just restructuring some things. With the audit and everything? She trailed off, suddenly very interested in her salad. The audit. Of course. Thomas's preemptive strike. Anything I should know about? No, just boring administrative stuff. She brightened. But I'd love your help with the seating arrangements. You always had such a knack for knowing who should sit where. Like I'd had a knack for choosing friends, for choosing a fiancé. Speaking of seating arrangements, I said carefully, I noticed you're using Mitchell's for the wedding catering. Weren't they booked solid through September? Her fork clattered against her plate. How did you? Lucky guess. They're the best in town, after all. That's why I booked them originally. The silence stretched between us like a tripwire. Cadence, she started, but her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and I caught Thomas's name on the screen before she quickly turned it face down. You should get that, I said softly. Might be important. Later, after she'd hurried away with barely concealed relief, I sat in my car and called Nadine. How'd it go? She asked. They're changing the donor list, trying to bury the evidence before the audit. Shit. A pause. Want me to ask around? I still have friends on the board. No. I started my car, watched Catherine's Mercedes disappear around the corner. I need you to do something else, something bigger. I outlined the plan Nicholas and I had developed. When I finished, the line was quiet. That's intense, Nadine finally said. Are you sure? They're using my vendors, Nadine. The ones I researched and booked. The ones who had to break their contracts with me when we postponed. How did they manage that? Another pause. You think Thomas used his position at the bank to pressure them? I think nothing about this is coincidence. I pulled out into traffic, heading toward the gallery. Will you help? You know I will. But Katie, what if this doesn't give you what you need? What if it just makes everything worse? I thought about Catherine's quick smiles, her casual possession of my life, about Thomas's name lighting up her phone. It can't get worse, I said. It can only get more honest. At the gallery, I found Grace waiting in my office. Mom called again, she said without preamble. Catherine invited her to the bridal shower next week. I sat heavily in my chair. Already? She's moving fast, like she's afraid if she slows down, everything will fall apart. Grace perched on my desk. Maybe we should let it. Just tell everyone the truth now. No. I pulled up my email, started typing. They want speed? Let's give them speed. What are you doing? Sending out invitations to a special preview night for the auction's centerpiece. I hit send with more force than necessary. The Rothman piece Catherine's so proud of. The fake one? The real one? I smiled grimly. The one I found this morning, hidden in our storage room. The one Catherine doesn't know about yet. Grace's eyes widened. How did you? Because unlike Catherine, I actually do my research. I know the real story behind that painting, and next week everyone else will too. My phone buzzed. Catherine, accepting the preview night invitation with a string of excited emojis. Perfect. Sometimes the best way to expose a fake isn't to call it out directly. Sometimes you just need to put the real thing right next to it and let people see the truth for themselves. The bridal shower invitation sat on my kitchen counter like a bomb waiting to detonate. Cream-colored cardstock, gold foil lettering, the same design I'd saved to my Pinterest board last year. You don't have to go, Grace said, watching me stare at it. No one would blame you. I do, though. I traced the embossed flowers with my fingertip. Because Catherine's getting sloppy. Did you notice the time on the invitation? Grace picked it up, frowning. 2 p.m., so? The preview night at the gallery starts at 3. She's scheduled them back to back. I smiled thinly. She's so focused on playing the blushing bride, she's forgetting to pay attention to the details. My phone chimed. Nicholas calling. We have a problem, he said without preamble. The real Rothman piece? Someone's trying to move it. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. What do you mean, move it? A private buyer. Very generous offer, very rushed timeline. They want it before the auction. Catherine? Has to be. She must have figured out what we're planning. I closed my eyes, remembering her face at lunch. The flicker of awareness when I'd mentioned the painting. She'd known. Of course she'd known. Can they do it? Move it before the preview? Technically, yes, but... He paused. There might be a way to stop it. It's risky, though. Tell me. He outlined the plan. With each detail, my stomach twisted tighter. That's not just risky, Grace said when I explained it later. That's career suicide. If it goes wrong, then I lose my job. I shrugged. Better than letting them win. Is it? Really? She grabbed my arm. Katie, look at me. When was the last time you slept through the night? When was the last time you thought about anything except this? I pulled away. They're the ones who made it personal. And you're the one letting it consume you. She softened her voice. I ran into Thomas yesterday. My head snapped up. What? Where? At Gran's. He was dropping off her heart medication, like he always does. She watched me carefully. She still doesn't know, Katie, about any of it. She asked him how the wedding plans were going, and he just stood there, looking like he wanted to die. Good. Is it? Because he also looked like he wanted to tell her everything, like maybe he's not as comfortable with this as you think. Don't. My voice cracked. Don't try to make him the good guy here. I'm not, but maybe. My phone buzzed again. Nadine this time. It's happening, she said. Catherine just called an emergency meeting with the auction committee. Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow. Too soon. Unless... The bridal shower, I said slowly. It's at her mother's house, right? Yeah, why? Because while everyone's distracted with that, someone needs to be at the gallery. Someone with access to the secure storage room. I caught Grace's eye. Someone who knows exactly where to find proof of what they're trying to hide. The line went quiet. Then, tell me what you need. After hanging up, I turned to Grace. I need you to do something for me. Something I can't do myself. What? Go to the bridal shower. Keep Catherine busy. Make sure she stays there the whole time. She stared at me. You want me to help you break into the gallery? No. I want you to help me protect my career, my reputation, everything they're trying to take from me. I picked up the invitation, crumpled it in my fist. Will you? For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, one condition. After this, whatever happens, you get help. Real help. Because this isn't just about justice anymore, and you know it. I thought about Thomas at Grand's, delivering medication like nothing had changed. About Catherine using my wedding plans like a blueprint for her own happiness. Fine, I said. But first, we finish this. I pulled out my phone, typed a quick message to Catherine. Can't wait for the shower. BTW. Heard about the private buyer for the Rothman. Brilliant move. Much better than waiting for the auction. Less chance of surprises that way. Her response came quickly. What are you talking about? Oh, sorry, I wrote back. Was that not public yet? My mistake. See you tomorrow. I showed the exchange to Grace. Now we wait. For what? For Catherine to panic. For her to realize she's not the only one who knows how to play this game. I smiled, and it felt like breaking glass. For her to understand that some surprises can't be bought off or buried. My phone lit up with a call from Thomas. I let it ring. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The gallery's security system beeped softly as I entered my code. 6:47 a.m. Hours before anyone else would arrive. The empty halls echoed with my footsteps as I made my way to the storage room, trying to ignore how much this felt like breaking and entering, despite having every legal right to be here. My phone buzzed. Grace. Catherine's already freaking out. Called Mom at dawn, asking if you seemed off lately. I smiled grimly, typing back, Perfect. Keep me posted. The storage room key felt heavy in my hand. One turn, and there'd be no going back. I'd be crossing a line that separated professional integrity from personal vendetta. I wouldn't do that if I were you. I spun around. Nicholas stood in the doorway, looking grave. What are you doing here? Stopping you from making a massive mistake. He held up his phone. The board called. They're moving up the audit. To today. My hand dropped from the key. That's not possible. The preview night has been canceled. Catherine just announced it. Cited technical difficulties with the venue. He stepped closer. They're not just covering their tracks anymore, Cadence. They're burning the whole trail. Then we have to move faster. The proof is right behind this door. Is it? He caught my arm. Or are you so focused on revenge that you're seeing evidence where there isn't any? I jerked away. I saw the lease agreement, the vendor contracts, the lease agreement that mysteriously disappeared from Thomas's laptop, the contracts no one else has seen. His voice softened. The wedding plans that might have changed naturally, even if they weren't trying to hurt you? Don't. My voice cracked. Don't try to make me doubt what I know. I'm trying to make you see what everyone else will see. A jealous ex going off the deep end. A professional woman letting personal drama destroy her career. He paused. Is that really the story you want to tell? My phone buzzed again. Grace. Catherine's mom just called. Said she found old emails between them from before your engagement. You need to see these. I showed Nicholas the message. Still think I'm imagining things? He read it, sighed heavily. Okay, but if we're doing this, we do it right. No breaking in, no stolen documents. We build a legal case, step by step. There's no time. The audit will show exactly what they want it to show. He pulled out a folder. Unless we give them something they can't ignore. Something that makes the financial angle secondary. I opened the folder. Inside were printouts of emails, bank statements, text messages, a timeline stretching back over a year. How did you... Nadine's not the only one with board connections. He smiled grimly. And it turns out, I'm not the only one who's been watching Catherine's creative accounting. My hands shook as I read. The evidence was worse than I'd imagined. Better than I'd hoped. Why didn't you show me this before? Because you needed to be sure. About all of it. About what you're willing to lose. He took the folder back. The question is, are you ready for what happens next? Because this doesn't just expose them. It exposes everything. My phone lit up with a call from Thomas. For the first time in days, I answered. Don't do this, he said immediately. Whatever you're planning. Did you love me? I interrupted. Any of it. Was any of it real? The silence stretched so long, I thought he'd hung up. Yes, he finally said. That's what makes it worse. I closed my eyes. Worse for who, Thomas? Everyone. Catherine's not who you think she is. This whole thing, it's complicated. Actually, it's very simple. I looked at Nicholas, at the folder in his hands. It's about choices and consequences. Cadence, please. The preview night is canceled. I cut him off. But don't worry, I have something better planned. I hung up before he could respond. Turned to Nicholas. Whatever's in that folder, it goes public today. All of it. It'll burn bridges you can't rebuild. Good. I started walking toward my office. Some bridges should stay burned. My phone buzzed one last time. Grace again. Mom's sending the emails now. But Katie, there's something else. Something about Gran's medication. About why Thomas was really delivering it. I stopped walking. What do you mean? I think they've been using her to launder money. Through her prescriptions. And I think that's just the beginning. The gallery's lights hummed overhead. Somewhere, a clock ticked toward the audit. Toward Catherine's bridal shower. Toward whatever end we were all hurtling toward. Nicholas, I said quietly, how much room is left in that folder? He smiled. Not grimly this time. Dangerously. Plenty. The bridal shower was in full swing when I walked in. Pastel decorations, champagne flutes, perfectly arranged petite fours. Everything exactly as I would have planned it. Because, of course, Catherine had used my planning spreadsheet. She saw me immediately, face lighting up with practiced warmth. Cadence! You made it! Wouldn't miss it. I hugged her, felt her stiffen slightly as I whispered, We need to talk. Now. She pulled back, smile never wavering. Of course! Let me just… Now, Catherine. Something in my voice must have reached her. She nodded, led me to the kitchen. Away from the cheerful chatter and clinking glasses. What's going on? She asked once we were alone. You're acting strange. I pulled out my phone, showed her the first email. Watched her face drain of color. Where did you get that? Gran's medication, Catherine? Really? You couldn't find another way to move the money. She gripped the counter. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. The gallery funds, the fake invoices, using my grandmother's prescriptions to launder money. What I don't understand is why. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Her voice cracked. Thomas and we never meant to hurt you. No? Then explain this. I showed her another email. One from 14 months ago, before my engagement, before everything. She read it, closed her eyes. How much do you know? Everything. The long game you played. How you pushed Thomas to propose to me, knowing it would give you access to the gallery's major donors. How you used my wedding planning to create the perfect cover for moving money. I stepped closer. How you made me trust you completely, so I'd never see what was really happening. Cadence. The audit starts in 20 minutes, I interrupted. In that time, you have exactly one chance to make this right. A noise from the doorway made us both turn. Thomas stood there, face ashen. It's over, he said quietly. Nicholas just called. The board has everything. Catherine's champagne flute shattered on the floor. What did you do? What you taught me to do. I smiled, though it felt like swallowing glass. I paid attention to the details. Footsteps in the hallway. Grace appeared, followed by two serious-looking men in suits. Ms. Little? One of them said. We need you to come with us. Catherine's eyes darted between them. Me, Thomas, looking for an escape route. Always looking for an escape route. Wait. Thomas stepped forward. I can explain. Can you explain Gran's medication? I asked quietly. Can you explain using my grandmother to commit fraud? He flinched. Behind him, I heard gasps. Turned to see Catherine's mother in the doorway, other guests crowding behind her. Catherine! Her mother's voice shook. What is she talking about? But Catherine wasn't looking at her mother. She was looking at me, really looking, maybe for the first time. You could have just exposed the gallery fraud, she said softly. You didn't have to bring families into it. No, I agreed. But you did that first, didn't you? The men in suits moved forward. Catherine straightened her spine, smoothed her dress. Always performing, even now. She hesitated. Take care of Gran, okay? Make sure she gets her medicine. The real medicine. Something twisted in my chest. Even now, she was trying to manipulate me. Make me doubt. Make me feel guilty, not anymore. Goodbye, Catherine. I walked out of the kitchen, past the shocked guests, past the perfect decorations and untouched petit fours. Grace followed me to my car. You okay? I leaned against the steering wheel. Ask me tomorrow. The board's meeting now. They'll probably need to talk to you. I know. I sat up, started the car. But first, I need to see Gran. Tell her everything myself before she hears it from someone else. Want me to come? I shook my head. This one I need to do alone. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse in my rearview mirror. Catherine being led to a waiting car. Thomas watching helplessly from the doorway. The perfect couple, the perfect plan, perfectly destroyed. My phone buzzed. Nicholas. Board wants to meet. You ready? I thought about Catherine's face when she realized she'd lost. About Thomas's silence when confronted with the truth. About all the months I'd spent planning my own wedding, never suspecting I was helping them build their perfect crime. Ready, I texted back. Because that's the thing about perfect plans, about perfect couples, about perfect anything. Look closely enough, pay attention to the details, and you'll always find the cracks, the hidden signatures, the truth beneath the forgery. I turned toward Gran's house, toward whatever came next. Sometimes the hardest part isn't exposing the truth. It's living with it afterward. Gran's pearls caught the light as I lifted them from their velvet box. The same pearls Catherine had planned to wear down the aisle, before everything fell apart. You should wear them, Gran said from her armchair. They were meant for you anyway. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. I set the necklace back, careful with its weight. Like everything else these days, the board meeting had gone exactly as Nicholas predicted. Catherine's creative accounting had been just the tip of the iceberg. The fraud charges would take months to fully unravel. Thomas's bank was launching its own investigation. Have you heard from them? Gran asked, reading my mind the way she always could. Catherine's lawyer called yesterday. She wants to make a deal. I moved to the window, watched autumn leaves scatter across the lawn. She's willing to testify against Thomas. And he? Wants to testify against her. I laughed, but it came out hollow. They're still perfectly matched, even now. Gran was quiet for a moment. Then, you never told me how you knew. About the medication scheme. I turned back to her. You did. Those headaches you kept getting? They weren't from the heart medication. They were from whatever they were giving you instead. Ah, she nodded slowly. And the gallery funds? Catherine got sloppy, started taking shortcuts. But mostly, I picked up a framed photo from the mantel. Me and Catherine at my engagement party, both laughing at something off camera. Mostly I just finally started paying attention to what was right in front of me. The doorbell rang. Grace, right on time. Ready? She asked when I opened the door. Almost. I went back to Gran's chair, kissed her cheek. You'll be okay? Better than okay. Nadine's coming over with that mystery novel she promised. She squeezed my hand. Go. Do what you need to do. The gallery was quiet when we arrived. Most of the staff had taken early lunch, knowing what was coming. What I had to do. The Rothman piece hung exactly where Catherine had placed it. The fake one, not the real one. That was safely in police custody now, along with all the evidence of how they'd used it to move money through the gallery's accounts. "You don't have to do this yourself," Grace said softly. "Yes, I do." I started with the placard, removed Catherine's carefully crafted description, replaced it with the truth about the forgery, about how it had been used, about everything. My phone buzzed. "Nicholas. Plea deals are official, both taking reduced sentences in exchange for full confession." I showed Grace the message. Guess neither of them could stand the thought of the other getting a better deal. Poetic justice. More like tragic irony. I stepped back, surveyed my work. They really did love each other, in their way. "And you? Are you okay?" I thought about the pearls in Gran's velvet box, about Catherine's final attempt at manipulation, trying to make me feel responsible for her choices, about Thomas's silence in that kitchen, heavy with things he'd never say. "I'm not okay," I said finally, "but I'm getting there." The gallery doors opened. The first visitors of the day, coming to see the exhibition Catherine had planned so carefully, the one that would now tell a very different story. "Ms. Howard?" My assistant appeared, tablet in hand. "The Times reporter is here. Ready for your statement?" I straightened my spine, checked my reflection in the glass. No more perfect bride, no more perfect friend, no more perfect anything. Just the truth, in all its messy glory. "Ready?" Grace touched my arm. "Want me to stay?" "No." I smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it felt real. I've got this, because that's the thing about betrayal, about love, about trust. They're not just things that happen to you, they're choices you make, again and again, until you finally learn to make different ones. I walked toward the reporter, toward whatever came next. Behind me, the fake Rothman hung like a reminder of what I'd almost lost, of what I'd found instead. Not closure. I was done believing in perfect endings, but something better, something real. The truth about art, about love, about life itself. Sometimes the most valuable pieces aren't the ones that look perfect from every angle. They're the ones that show their scars, their stories, their survival. And as I began to tell my story, the real story, I realized something Catherine and Thomas never had. Some things are worth more broken than perfect, and some truths are worth every crack they cause. Hello, I'm Marla. It was supposed to be my baby shower, my moment, but right before I cut the cake, my sister stood up and announced she got into Harvard, and suddenly, everyone acted like I was the guest at her party. They pushed aside the baby decorations I'd made by hand, called my cake the backup dessert, and asked me to move my own gifts off the table so they could make room for champagne. But that wasn't even the worst part. What if I told you it didn't end there? What if the people closest to you used your silence to write you out of your own story? Would you still call it family? They say your baby shower should feel like soft pastels and polite laughter. I believed that too, at least until 3:12 p.m., when my sister walked in holding an envelope like it was dipped in gold. The house still smelled like vanilla frosting and lemon floor cleaner. I'd been on my feet all morning, hanging garlands, adjusting folding chairs, cueing a playlist full of lullabies I imagined my daughter might fall asleep to. I even steamed the curtains last night because Jocelyn once said my living room felt dingy. I didn't want to give her anything else to mock. For the first hour, it felt almost normal. My cousin brought a stuffed fox. My aunt hugged me and said I had a glow. I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. Then my mom tapped her wine glass. "We have something exciting to share," she announced, eyes locked on Jocelyn like she was cueing a magician's act. Jocelyn stepped forward, holding a single sheet of paper. "I got in," she said. "Harvard Law." There was a pause, half a beat, before someone shrieked and others started clapping like trained seals. I was still standing behind the cake table with a knife in my hand. No one even looked at me. My dad clapped Jocelyn on the back, saying, "That's my girl." My mom hugged her so tightly I wondered if she remembered I was pregnant. 8 months and barely balanced on my own feet. The decorations I hung myself? Pushed aside. The Welcome Baby June banner? Gone. A cousin moved it, just for a second, to hang a makeshift Harvard-bound sign someone had pulled from a gift bag. I watched Jocelyn's friends, people I'd never met, wander in and slap high fives over the chips I paid for. Then someone asked me, to shift the baby gifts off the table so they could make space for drinks. I nodded, didn't even blink, just gathered them up and quietly placed them near the window. My hands were shaking, but I made sure the bows stayed intact. Jocelyn gave a speech. Said dreams only work if you don't let people's expectations limit you. I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste iron. She didn't thank me. No one mentioned me. Not even once. The cake sat untouched, the one I'd chosen to be soft and sweet, vanilla with a raspberry center. Jocelyn's friend pointed at it and joked, "Guess that's for the backup party." I walked into the kitchen. The counter was sticky. Someone had spilled soda next to the sink. I found a cloth and wiped it silently. Behind me, they laughed. Jocelyn's laugh. My mom's. Glasses clinked. My hand trembled, but I didn't drop the rag. I kept scrubbing the counter as if it mattered. That was the moment I realized I wasn't invisible. I was intentionally being erased. I didn't return to the party right away. I stood by the sink for a long moment, pressing the rag flat against the counter, watching the bubbles fade into nothing. The laughter grew louder, brighter, like the rest of them were breathing oxygen I couldn't access. When I finally walked back into the living room, something had shifted. Not just the energy, the space itself, the banner I'd spent hours cutting and taping, "Welcome Baby June," was gone. The string where it had been pinned now held a different sign, Harvard bound. The paper garlands I'd strung up with swollen ankles were in the trash, soaking in spilled soda. One of Jocelyn's friends had their phone propped up, filming some kind of group dance in front of the fireplace. My playlist? Gone. Replaced with bass-heavy music I didn't recognize. My own home felt borrowed. I walked slowly, pretending not to notice, like maybe if I didn't react, it would all snap back. But every step I took screamed louder than my silence. One of Jocelyn's friends, a guy with a smirk that said, "I've never been told no," pointed at the gift table and asked if anyone had seen the gin. Another guest, someone I barely knew, said, "Marla? Oh, she's probably reorganizing burp cloths somewhere." I blinked, kept walking. When I reached the cake table, I stopped. My cake, the one I ordered with soft cream frosting and little edible roses, was shoved into the fridge, lopsided and cold. In its place sat a gaudy red sheet cake with white block letters that read, "Congrats Harvard Queen." I heard someone behind me say, "That other one looked like it was for a retirement party anyway." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My hands were already grabbing napkins before my brain registered the crash near the drinks table. Someone had knocked over a glass of punch. It rolled beneath the coffee table, the liquid spreading. Reflex took over. I got down on my knees and started blotting it up. And then, heels. Click, click. Jocelyn's voice above me, too casual. "Careful down there, Marla. Hate to see you ruin someone's shoes." She didn't laugh. She didn't need to. Her friends did it for her. One of them pulled out their phone. I didn't look up, but I knew the lens was pointed at me. My knees pressed into the floor as I scrubbed. No one offered to help. They stepped around me like I was just part of the mess. Just more clutter on the floor. In that position, a memory surfaced. Uninvited. Sharp. I was 7. Jocelyn was 5. She broke my favorite porcelain doll by slamming it on the kitchen tiles. When I cried, Mom said it was my fault for leaving it out. Jocelyn got a popsicle. I got silence. Back in the present, I felt the cold frosting smear beneath my palm. People passed by, some patting Jocelyn on the shoulder, some asking how she did it, if she was nervous about moving to the East Coast. No one asked how I was feeling. No one noticed that I was on the floor. I stood slowly, pressing my palm against my thigh to steady myself. Colleen passed by, brushing her fingers against my shoulder. "Don't make this about you," she murmured. "This is a happy day." I looked at her. She smiled and kept walking. I took a deep breath, trying not to cry. Instead, I swallowed every word I'd wanted to scream. If this was what happiness looked like to them, then maybe mourning didn't have to mean tears. Maybe it meant silence. Maybe it meant disappearing just long enough for them to realize I was never the problem. I waited until the last guest left. The front door clicked shut just before 8, and for the first time in hours, the house exhaled. I stood in the hallway, staring at the trail of crumbs across the hardwood and the red cup abandoned on the stairs. The air was stale, too sweet from melted frosting, and too loud with the echo of a party I was never invited to, even in my own home. I walked into the living room, cups everywhere. A plate of half-eaten sliders balanced on top of my baby book display. Someone had kicked one of the centerpieces under the couch. The Harvard-bound banner still hung over the fireplace. The only thing that remained of my decorations was a strip of tape curled sadly near the window. My speaker sat mute on the shelf. I pressed play. My lullaby playlist resumed, barely a whisper beneath the weight of what had happened. I turned it off. There was a brochure on the couch. Harvard Law Welcome Weekend Packet. My name was listed on the confirmation email peeking out from underneath it. I didn't remember RSVPing. I didn't need to. My father had used my secondary business card, the one I kept for office supply orders and printer ink. The charge was right there in my transaction list. Airfare, hotel, rideshare credits. He hadn't asked. He hadn't even mentioned it. I picked up the paper, stared at the bolded line. Family support is the first step to academic success. My jaw clenched. I was still holding it when Mom walked in, holding a half-eaten cookie. "Marla, hey," she said casually, as if we were chatting over coffee. "Jocelyn's gonna need help with her deposits. Could you cover a few fees up front? Just until her grant kicks in." She didn't pause. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't thank me for hosting or acknowledge anything about what happened hours ago. "You're doing well, right?" she added. "The shop's stable?" I looked at her for a long second. "Mom," I said softly, "I just watched you tear down my baby shower. You let Jocelyn turn it into a personal pep rally, and now you're asking me to pay for it." She blinked, confused like I'd switched the language on her mid-sentence. "Well, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. You've always been so practical." She said practical like it meant disposable. I walked past her. In the kitchen, I sat down with my laptop and checked my pending orders. Still dozens to ship. I was tired. Every part of me ached. But I remembered all the nights I'd worked until 1 a.m. while pregnant, packing onesies and typing thank you notes to strangers who supported my little store. They didn't know what I was carrying, not just a baby, but an entire family on my back. Jocelyn had private tutors. I taught myself coding from YouTube. She got a MacBook for her birthday. I got told I was too old to dream. I thought about all of it, sitting there in the dim kitchen light. Mom called from the hallway. "So is that a yes?" I didn't yell. I didn't cry. "No," I said. There was a pause. "Oh, okay," she said, like she couldn't quite compute it. But I did. I understood it perfectly, because this time, I meant it. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The house was still. I moved slowly, careful not to wake anyone. The air still smelled faintly of soda and frosting. My back ached, but it wasn't from the pregnancy. It was the weight of being tolerated, not celebrated. I made tea and opened my laptop to check shop orders. A notification blinked at the top of the screen. "Order canceled. Aunt Beth." The message she left read, "I just feel it's better to invest in someone going places. Jocelyn's got a future ahead of her. Crafts can wait." Crafts can wait. Like my business wasn't real, like I wasn't real. I clicked over to the family group chat. Aunt Beth had pasted the same message there, followed by a confetti emoji and "Go Jocelyn." No one responded. No one defended me. The chat went silent, a void where voices should have stood up for me. I stared at the screen until the cursor stopped blinking. I put my phone down. 10 minutes later, I got a text from Becca, an old co-worker I hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey, is that your sister on TikTok? You might want to look." My stomach turned before I even opened the app. The video had nearly 12,000 views. Jocelyn stood in my living room, mocking a pregnant woman, whining, fake crying, waddling across the screen. The caption read, "When the baby shower's not even about the baby anymore." Hashtag, #main character energy. Another one, #not everything is about you. My face flushed. It wasn't just a joke. It was a performance, and the audience, laughing. I walked upstairs, phone in hand, trying to breathe past the pounding in my chest. I bumped into Mom outside the laundry room. "You've seen the video?" I asked. She didn't look up from folding towels. "Jocelyn's just being silly. Don't take things so seriously." I stared at her. "Silly?" I repeated. "She's just having fun. Don't make it into something it's not," she said, still focused on smoothing out pillowcases. "Do you even see me?" I asked. She didn't answer, just moved past me with the basket like nothing had been said at all. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the phone screen again. The video kept playing in a loop. My living room, my baby shower, her spotlight. I opened the family chat and left without saying a word. Then I unfollowed Aunt Beth, then Jocelyn, then Mom. I turned off all notifications, tossed my phone onto the comforter, and exhaled into the quiet. From upstairs, I heard the distant hum of a vacuum. Jocelyn, still here, still making noise, still unaware of what she'd burned down. I wasn't angry because they'd left me behind. I was angry because, deep down, I'd still expected them not to. I was at the kitchen table sipping lukewarm coffee when it landed. A forwarded message from Lauren, my business partner. The subject line read, "Just wanted you to see this." The email had no name, just a vague signature, a concerned friend. It said, "You may want to consider if Marla is in the right headspace to continue managing operations. With her condition, she may be overwhelmed, emotionally unstable, even unpredictable. Just a thought before things spiral." My blood chilled. The phrasing, her condition, overwhelmed, spiral, they weren't random, they were borrowed. I'd heard those exact words from my mother before. Once, during a minor panic attack when I was 25 and working 2 jobs, she'd said, "You're spiraling again." This wasn't a stranger's voice. It was hers, dressed up in faux concern and sent anonymously. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. A text from my cousin Paige. "Hey, Aunt Colleen mentioned you've been kind of different lately, just checking in." Another from my uncle. "Your mom said you might need support right now. Happy to talk if you're open to it." Support, like an intervention was coming. They weren't worried. I wasn't unraveling. They were laying a foundation. If I ever did speak up, they'd say, "See, we told you she was unstable." I stared at my phone. It trembled in my hand, not from fear, but from restraint. Instead of replying, I opened a new tab and drafted an email to my lawyer. I attached screenshots of the email, the texts, even the TikTok. I labeled the subject, "Early Signs of Reputational Sabotage, Legal Documentation." Then I closed my laptop. Jocelyn passed through the hallway behind me, phone in hand, still wearing one of my old cardigans. She didn't even look at me. I didn't flinch. I didn't nod. I didn't breathe her in. They wanted silence to mean submission. I was redefining it, turning it into strategy. That evening, my mom knocked softly on my bedroom door. "Sweetheart, you okay?" she asked. "Just wanted to check in. You've been so quiet lately." I didn't answer. I heard her hand rest briefly against the doorframe. "We're all just trying to help you," she said gently. Help me. The same way someone might gently close a lid over a flame they didn't want to see grow. Inside my mind, something snapped into place. They wanted to call me unstable? I'd show them what stability looks like when it decides it's done playing nice. The next morning? But something was off. My store's 5-star average had plummeted overnight. The reviews were brutal. Owner is rude and clearly unstable. She shouldn't be running a business while pregnant. I scanned through them, heart pounding. They all sounded oddly similar, too personal, too specific. I checked IP logs on my admin dashboard, something I rarely did. 3 of the negative reviews traced back to our home's Wi-Fi. One from Jocelyn's phone, another from her laptop. The third? A burner Gmail, posted the same minute she was streaming a cooking video downstairs. This wasn't random trolling. This was sabotage. I barely had time to process when my stomach cramped lightly. Again. It had been happening for days now, but I chalked it up to stress. I reached for my prenatal vitamins on the counter and froze. The pills looked different, slightly translucent. I grabbed the spare, unopened bottle from my office drawer, compared the colors. They didn't match. I opened the hallway camera footage from 3 nights ago. There she was, Jocelyn, reaching into the kitchen cabinet at midnight, holding both bottles. My breath left me like a punch to the chest. I walked to the living room. She was sprawled on the couch, feet up, flipping channels like nothing was wrong. I held the vitamin bottle in one hand and the open laptop in the other. "You think I wouldn't notice?" I said, voice calm. She didn't even turn around. "You're overreacting." "Really?" I took one step closer. "Because if you'd done this to anyone else, it'd be called assault." Mom appeared from the hallway, hair wrapped in a towel. "Marla, stop, please. Don't make this bigger than it is." "No," I said, holding her gaze. "You already made it big. I'm just making it real." I walked straight past them both and back into my office, attached the footage, attached the IP screenshots, hit send to my lawyer. Then I printed 3 eviction notices, labeled, dated, signed. It wasn't rage that moved my hand, it was instinct. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. This was protection, for me, for her. The next morning, the kitchen smelled like toast and entitlement. I walked in with the stack of eviction papers under my arm. Jocelyn was at the counter, sipping orange juice like she hadn't tried to poison my pregnancy. Dennis scrolled through his phone. Colleen was plating eggs like we were still pretending to be a functioning family. I placed the documents down. "I need you all to read these." Jocelyn barely glanced up. "More lists?" She gave a mock yawn. "Let me guess. Boundaries again?" I slid her notice across the table. "This one has a deadline." She picked it up, eyes narrowing. "You're serious." "Dead serious," I said. Colleen wiped her hands on a dish towel. "Marla, please, can we talk like adults?" "This is me being an adult," I said calmly. "This is what protecting myself looks like." Jocelyn scoffed. "You know, courts don't look kindly on mothers who kick out their own parents and sister, especially pregnant ones. I'd hate for people to start wondering if you're mentally fit to raise a baby alone." That stopped everything. Even Dennis looked up. I took a slow breath. "If you're threatening to involve child services, go ahead. I've documented everything. Every review, every message, every bottle of pills you touched. You want to play that game?" I leaned closer. "I promise you, I play cleaner, but I play harder." Colleen tried stepping between us. "Don't do this. You're making this house a battlefield." I stared straight into her eyes. "No, you did. When you picked sides instead of protecting me." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Jocelyn pushed her chair back hard. "You're pathetic," she spat. "All this drama just because I got into Harvard and you're bitter about it." I let that hang in the air. Then I said, "You lit the match the day you turned my baby shower into your party. This is just the fire finally catching up." I left the room before they could answer. Walked upstairs, shut the door. Outside, the shouting started. Jocelyn's voice sharp, Colleen begging for calm, Dennis trying to mediate like always. But inside it was quiet. I sat down, opened a folder, and labeled it, Protective Filing, Custody and Residency. This wasn't panic. This was preparation. A week passed in a blur of notarized forms, attorney calls, and quiet meals alone. My body felt heavier with each passing day, not just from the baby, but from years of silence finally gaining mass. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in flats and a loose navy dress. Practical, unassuming. Let the evidence do the yelling. At the courthouse, no one held the door for me. Jocelyn sauntered in behind me, eyeliner sharp, lips curled like she was headed to a photo shoot. Colleen wore a soft cardigan and tear-ready eyes. Dennis didn't say a word. We sat across from each other like strangers, me with a folder of receipts, footage, messages, them with expressions polished for pity. When the judge asked for clarity, I stood. This is about safety, emotional, physical, financial, for me, for my child. Jocelyn rolled her eyes. She's hormonal. This is retaliatory. The judge reviewed the documents for what felt like hours, though the clock only ticked twice. Finally, his voice cut through. 30 days to vacate, no appeals, no exceptions. Outside, the sky was clear. Jocelyn muttered something about appealing if she felt like it. Colleen cried. Dennis just walked ahead, keys jangling. Back home, I passed by their rooms. Boxes stacked in the hallway. Jocelyn's closet gaped open, her heels tossed carelessly into a suitcase. I heard a sniff behind a closed door, but didn't pause. In the kitchen, Colleen clutched a mug. Are you really going to go through with this? I looked at her and said, I've gone through with worse. She nodded once, eyes wet, and left without finishing her tea. Dennis packed in silence. No eye contact, maybe guilt, maybe just fatigue. When they were gone, Jocelyn slammed the car door and shouted before pulling away, You just ruined this family! I didn't even turn, just replied, No, I stopped pretending it existed. The house echoed differently now. No clicking heels, no unsolicited comments about my weight, just stillness. I walked room to room, touching the door frames, the light switches, like rediscovering a home that had never truly been mine until now. They left chaos behind. But this time, it wasn't mine to clean. 4 years. That's how long it's been since the door closed behind them for the last time. Since the echo of Jocelyn's accusation faded into the driveway, replaced by the hum of my own breathing. Now it's just me and her, my daughter. Every morning we pack her little purple backpack and clip her braids with glittery barrettes. She likes clouds, says she wants to be a weather girl who paints the sky. This morning, she ran to me with a crayon in each hand, eyes wide with joy. Mama, today I'm going to show the class how to draw thunder, I smiled. Make it loud then, baby. Sometimes I watch her and think, she got to start where I never did, not needing to prove her worth to the room. The house is quieter now, but full. Books in every corner, plants in the windows, a tea kettle that whistles too loudly but always means peace is brewing. The shop? Thriving. 2 employees, a waiting list through spring. And me? I sleep at night. At a cousin's wedding last summer, someone leaned in and whispered, You heard Jocelyn dropped out? I nodded politely. Colleen and Dennis moved in with Uncle James for a while. Didn't end well. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need the details. Closure doesn't always come wrapped in karma. Sometimes it just arrives when you stop caring. I wasn't glad. I wasn't bitter. I was done. As we pulled up to preschool, my daughter kicked her feet against the seat. Love you, Mama, she said, swinging her lunchbox over her shoulder. Love you bigger, I whispered, walking her up the steps. She turned back once before going inside and grinned. That smile, undented, undiluted, reminded me why I did it all. Not to win, but to rebuild. Back in the car, the morning light stretched across the windshield like a new page. I placed my hand on the steering wheel, then on my belly. A quieter life, a real one. We weren't broken. We just needed space to grow something better. There's something you learn when you stop fighting for a seat at a table that was never built for you. You learn how to build your own. If you've ever felt overshadowed in your own story, I want you to know. It's not weakness to walk away. It's wisdom. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet, like locking the door behind you for the last time or showing up for yourself when no one else does. I spent too many years waiting for validation that was never coming. Now, I write my own ending, and so can you. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to let go of the people closest to you, just to finally find peace? Or maybe you're still holding on, hoping they'll change. Let's talk about it. Tell me below. Did this story strike something in you? If it did, drop a 1 in the comments, or tell me what city you're watching from. If it didn't, that's okay too. Tell me why and where you're tuning in. I read every message. And hey, if this story reached your heart or reminded you of your strength, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story we share here. We've got more real voices, more healing, and more truth coming your way. Because sometimes, all it takes is one story to help you write your own. Hi there, I'm Lorraine. After our family reunion, I got home, opened my banking app, and everything was gone. Not stolen by strangers. My own father took it. When I confronted him, he just shrugged and said, "We needed it." But that wasn't the worst part. Turns out, this wasn't a one-time mistake. It was years of silent manipulation, fake emergencies, loans in my name, even teaching my niece to lie. And for the longest time I stayed quiet, because they were family. But now I wonder, how many times did I mistake love for loyalty? The smell of charcoal and overcooked ribs still clung to my shirt as I stepped out of my parents' house and into the thick Boise heat. It was that kind of family reunion, the kind where everyone hugs too hard, asks too much, and gives too little. My mom had spent the afternoon gliding around with her signature wine glass like it was a trophy, pretending everyone loved each other. My dad, Ricky, mostly sat with the TV on mute, occasionally grunting out his opinion about politics or the price of gas. And Darlene? She was in rare form. "You probably make 6 figures now, right?" she blurted between bites of potato salad. "God must be nice." I laughed it off because that's what I always do. That's what keeps the peace. But something about the way she said it, sharp, loud, as if she wanted the whole backyard to hear, stuck in my chest like a splinter. By the time I got to my car, I could feel a headache building right behind my eyes. My father gave me a half-hearted wave and said, "Drive safe, Lorraine. Don't forget you're the lucky one in this family." I didn't respond. I just smiled tight and started the engine. On the drive home, the sky was still glowing from the last stretch of sunset, but the heat hadn't let up. The air conditioning felt like a blessing, but my mind wouldn't shut off. I kept hearing his voice. "You're the lucky one." As if luck had anything to do with why I was the only one who hadn't borrowed money, tanked their credit, or moved back in with our parents after 40. I got home just after 8:30, kicked off my shoes, tossed my purse on the kitchen counter, and instinctively opened my laptop. Checking my account balance had become second nature, a mix of anxiety and habit after a lifetime of being the responsible one. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. The screen loaded. My checking account showed $87.16. I blinked, hit refresh, same number. Yesterday, I had just over $14,000 in there. I had transferred a bonus check from work. I remembered double-checking the deposit. I refreshed the page again. Still $87.16. My hands started to tremble. I opened the transaction history. 3 large transfers had gone through since Friday, each for thousands, and all originating from a familiar IP address. My parents' Wi-Fi, the same one I had connected to during the reunion. A chill ran down my spine. My fingers hovered over the trackpad as if they could reverse it by pausing, as if staring long enough might bring the money back. My breath got shallow. I muttered to myself, "No, no way, he wouldn't, not Dad." But deep down, something cracked, like a curtain finally lifting. The signs had always been there. A week before the reunion, Darlene had called, voice shaking and tearful. "Lori, I hate asking, but the girls need supplies for school. I'm tapped out. Just $300, please?" I wired it to her within 10 minutes. 2 days later, she posted a selfie on Instagram, nails freshly done, holding a mimosa. Self-care Sunday. Another post showed a brunch spread that could have fed a family of 5. The caption said, "Treat yourself." I remembered staring at my phone, a pit forming in my stomach. But I didn't say anything. I told myself maybe someone else paid. Maybe she deserved a break. But now the pieces were rearranging themselves. I sat at my dining table staring at the screen. My apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge and the blood rushing in my ears. I hadn't even taken off my jacket. I scrolled through old mental files, memories I had buried under politeness. The time I covered her rent, just for 1 month. The time Dad's battery died, and I handed over $200 without blinking. The time Mom said, "You've always been good with money. Not everyone's like that." No one asked. They just assumed I'd help, that I should help, that I existed to help. And suddenly, that $87.16 meant something more than missing money. It meant they never saw me. Not really. I whispered aloud. They didn't even ask. I stared at the balance again. No one had called to warn me. No one had said, "Hey, we're in a bind." No one even pretended this was a shared decision. Just 3 emptying clicks, and the life I'd been quietly building drained out of me. I stood slowly, grabbed my coat again. My body moved before my brain did. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just grabbed my keys and walked out. I was going back. Tonight. The drive back to my parents' house was short, just under 20 minutes. But it felt longer under the weight of everything I couldn't yet explain. Streetlights flickered above me as I turned into their quiet neighborhood. I passed the same white picket fences, the same trimmed hedges, and it hit me how many times I'd made this same drive. Birthdays, holidays, emergencies that weren't mine. This time, it was me who needed answers. The porch light was still on when I pulled into the driveway. Their living room window glowed with a soft bluish hue. Dad probably watching the news with the volume too low to hear anything. I rang the bell once. Pamela opened the door, wine glass still in hand, her eyebrows raised, but her tone light. "Well, that was fast. Did you forget something, sweetheart?" "No," I said, stepping inside. "We need to talk, now." The house smelled like warm leftovers and fabric softener. Familiar, disarming. That was their trick. Make everything look normal on the outside, so you feel crazy for knowing it's not. Ricky barely turned his head from the couch. Darlene was stretched out on the armchair, scrolling on her phone like this was any other Sunday night. I didn't sit down. I stood in the middle of the room and said it. "My bank account is empty. Gone. All of it." Ricky didn't blink. Darlene didn't pause. Pamela frowned, tilted her head. "Oh, Lorraine, don't be so dramatic." I stared at her. "I'm not being dramatic, I'm being robbed." That got Ricky's attention. He took a sip of his beer and finally looked at me. "We needed it." I blinked. Darlene sighed like I had just inconvenienced her. "You're seriously going to throw a fit over money? You don't have a mortgage, no kids, no one depending on you." Pamela chimed in gently. "They were struggling, honey. Sometimes things happen. We didn't want to ask." "You didn't ask," I snapped. "You just took." Ricky shrugged, like that made sense. "You've always helped before. What's different now?" I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "I helped because I chose to, not because you stole from me." "You're blowing this out of proportion," Darlene said, finally setting her phone down. "It's not like we ran off to Vegas. We paid bills, groceries, rent, survival." Pamela sat on the edge of the recliner and sighed, like I'd accused her of something unthinkable. "It's just money, Lorraine." "No," I said, voice low. "It's trust, and you broke it." The room went quiet for a beat too long. Then Ricky said, "You didn't say we couldn't." I stared at him, blinking hard. "Because I didn't know I had to." Darlene rolled her eyes. "Maybe next time don't leave your login info open on the family computer. I mean, that's kind of on you." There it was, that casual cruelty, that entitlement dressed up like logic. I glanced around the room. No one looked ashamed, no one apologized. They just looked annoyed, like I was making things uncomfortable for daring to care that they emptied my savings. They'd taken the money. Now they wanted to take the narrative, too. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. Instead, I turned, grabbed my purse, and walked to the door. Ricky called after me. "So that's it? You're just leaving?" I didn't even glance back. "This isn't a misunderstanding," I said. "It's theft." And none of them tried to stop me. I stepped into the night air, the silence louder than any argument. As I walked to my car, the question looped in my head like a song I couldn't turn off. How long have they seen me as their backup plan? By the time I got home, the city had already gone quiet. Boise after dark was always oddly still, like it was trying to keep its secrets. I parked in the usual spot, entered the building, and rode the elevator in silence. It was close to 11 p.m. when I walked into my apartment and locked the door behind me. I didn't even turn on the lights. I dropped my purse on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and stood in the middle of my kitchen with a blank stare. I wasn't tired. I wasn't even angry, not yet. I just needed silence, and it gave me too much. After a few minutes, I opened my laptop, not really knowing why. Maybe part instinct, part compulsion. The screen lit up, still open to my bank dashboard from earlier. $87.16. It hadn't changed. Of course it hadn't. I minimized the tab and opened my email. Search, payment confirmation. 100 results flooded the inbox. Rent payments, Zelle transfers, Amazon orders I never made, flights I never took. I began scrolling, and the deeper I went, the more a pattern started to emerge. And then I found it. 2 years ago. A collection notice from a credit card company I didn't recognize. I'd assumed it was junk back then and tossed it. But tonight, I clicked into the details. The card was opened in my name, my address. But the purchases didn't match my life. Luxury candles, streaming services I never used, grocery delivery from a zip code across town, and one of the first charges? A new iPad, shipped to Darlene's apartment. I remembered calling the company trying to dispute the account. The rep asked if I'd authorized the application. No, I said. I never applied for this. The investigation traced the application IP to one address, my parents' house. The same IP that drained my checking account last weekend. I confronted Darlene. She didn't even deny it. It was a temporary thing, she'd said, sipping iced coffee like this was just another Tuesday. You weren't even using your credit. I figured it wouldn't hurt anything. I paid the balance to shut it down. Then I buried it, like always. Back then, I told myself it was a fluke, a bad judgment call. Family does stupid things sometimes. But now I wasn't so sure. I sat down slowly, pulled my hoodie over my knees, and clicked into my photo folder titled Family. Scrolling through birthdays, holidays, blurry selfies from over the years, I remembered the second hit. 6 months ago, a phone call at midnight. Darlene sobbing. Lori, it's Addison. She's really sick. Pneumonia. I don't have enough to cover the urgent care copay. Please. I'd sent $600 that night. No hesitation. 3 days later, Addison posted a TikTok from Lake Tahoe, dancing in a hotel robe, spinning in circles with her cousin by the pool. I called Darlene and asked, Wait, was she even sick? Her answer burned into my brain. Oh my God, you're always so suspicious. We just needed a break. Sorry we didn't clear it with you, Miss IRS. I didn't respond. I didn't demand it back. I just went quiet again. I don't know what was worse, that she lied or that I had believed her so easily. I looked around my apartment. The place felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in with every memory I had tried to forget. I opened a blank spreadsheet. Category, rent paid for others. Amount, $800. Category, Darlene's car battery. Amount, $250. Category, emergency, school supplies. Amount, $300. I kept typing. Cell phone bills, surprise birthday parties, gift cards, vet bills that weren't mine. I stared at the total. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. This had never been about one moment. It had never been about a single betrayal. It was a system. A quiet, manipulative running tab no one thought I'd ever question. I clicked Save As and typed the file name, Family Debt, Do Not Ignore. I sat back, feeling the weight shift inside my chest. This wasn't just money, it was respect, and they'd taken that too. 2 days passed. I didn't hear a word from them. Not a single text, not a voicemail, no apology, no defense. The silence felt tactical, like they were waiting for me to simmer down and pretend it never happened. But I wasn't the same woman they thought they could wear down. It was Thursday when I printed out every piece of evidence. Bank statements, credit alerts, identity reports. I slid the stack into a clean black folder, then set it on my kitchen table beside my keys. I stared at it for a full minute. It felt heavier than it was, like it carried every favor I never agreed to, every dollar I never offered, every time they mistook me for a doormat. By 6:45 that evening, I was parking across the street from my parents' house. I didn't pull into the driveway like usual. I wasn't here for dinner. I wasn't here for smiles. I was here for the truth. I stepped out, folder tucked under my arm. The grass was still damp from afternoon sprinklers. A breeze rattled the wind chimes hanging by their porch. I rang the bell once. Pamela answered, face drawn and unsure. You didn't say you were coming, she murmured. I'm not here to eat. She stepped aside without asking anything more. Ricky sat on the couch, reclined with a soda in hand. ESPN was playing at low volume. Darlene was in the corner chair, legs curled beneath her, scrolling like always. I didn't bother with greetings. I dropped the folder on the coffee table. The slap of it hitting the surface made Ricky flinch. What's that? He asked. Proof, I said. And the last time I'll explain anything. He chuckled, more annoyance than humor. You're still on about that account? No, I replied calmly. Now it's about all of them. I opened the folder and pulled the first page free. Remember this? You co-signed a personal loan 18 months ago using my name. I didn't sign this. Ricky blinked. You left your social on that tax form. I needed it. Fast. So you committed fraud and used my identity without asking. He didn't respond. Pamela stood in the doorway, arms crossed tightly. Her eyes said it all. She'd known. We helped you, Ricky said. We put food on your plate when you were in school. Paid for your books. You think all that came free? I've repaid you 10 times over, I snapped. With silence. With rent when you were short. With gifts you never earned. You used me because I didn't fight back. Darlene finally looked up. Oh, please. This whole victim act is exhausting. You act like we stole your soul. No, I said, my voice sharp. You stole something far more practical. My name, my future, my peace of mind. Ricky waved me off. Don't act like you're some saint. We all do what we have to for family. I held up another document, co-signature verification. I'm giving you 48 hours to fix this with the bank. Remove my name. Own it, or I report it. You wouldn't, Pamela whispered. I met her gaze. You want to bet on that? Darlene stood, mouth twisting. You're being cold, heartless even. What happened to us looking out for each other? What happened, I said, stepping toward the door, is that you thought looking out for each other meant I never got to look out for myself. I grabbed the folder, tucked it under my arm again. Ricky tried one last time. So what now? You gonna take your own family to court? If you ever use my name again, I said flatly, I'll use yours. In court. On paper. On the record. No one spoke. As I pulled the front door open, I didn't look back. You think guilt's going to keep me quiet? I said loud enough to echo down the hallway. Try me. Then I left, the door slamming shut behind me, not in rage, but in resolve. It had been a quiet week. Too quiet. No emails, no voicemails, no knocks at the door. I thought maybe, just maybe, they were letting it go. But on Saturday night, at exactly 8:03 p.m., a text lit up my phone from Pamela. Lunch at 1 tomorrow. Just us. Let's talk like family. Just us had always been code for, let's sweep this under the rug without outsiders watching. I should have ignored it. But part of me needed to hear what their next excuse would be. So I charged my laptop, printed 3 things, and placed them in a manila envelope. Not as evidence. Not anymore. As closure. Sunday was warm, too warm for anything serious to happen, and yet, there I was, walking up the steps of my parents' porch at 12:59 p.m., envelope in hand, notepad of patience completely empty. The front door creaked open before I could knock. Pamela stood there in her apron, her hair curled like it was Easter brunch. You came, she said, her smile stiff. I did. The dining table was already set. 4 places. I guess just us meant them plus me again. Ricky looked up from his chair and gave me a small nod, like we were meeting for a board meeting instead of a reckoning. Darlene didn't say anything, just sipped from a glass of sweet tea, tapping her acrylics against the stem. I didn't sit. We thought this would be a chance to reset, Pamela began, placing a dish of rolls in the center of the table, to clear the air. Clear it or twist it, I asked. Ricky leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Look, none of us handled things perfectly, but dragging this out? It's just hurting everyone, especially you. Hurting me? I said. You emptied my account and used my identity, but I'm the one making it worse? We're trying to move on, Pamela added, like this was a family disagreement over a burnt casserole and not financial fraud. Darlene finally spoke. We don't want to fight, Lorraine. What's done is done. Let's not let money come between us. That was their version of peace. No apology, no ownership, just pressure to pretend. I sat down slowly, placing the envelope on my plate like it was part of the setting. Funny you say that, I said, because I ran into Aunt Debbie yesterday at the grocery store. She asked if I was still being as generous as always. Pamela's smile cracked for half a second. She said, I continued, that you told her I offered to cover Darlene's bills, that I was just being my usual big-hearted self. Pamela didn't respond. I pulled out the printout and slid it across the table. A screenshot. A message thread from her phone. One she hadn't deleted from the cloud. Her text to Aunt Debbie, dated 2 days after I confronted them. She's overreacting. She offered to help. It wasn't like we took it without her knowing. Silence dropped like a curtain. I looked at all of them. "Let me be clear," I said. "I didn't offer anything. You stole from me, and now you're lying to other people about it, to protect your image." Darlene scoffed. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." I turned to her. "No, you just got too comfortable thinking I'd never say anything." I stood. "This is your last chance. After today, I go public. I go legal. I go wherever I need to so this doesn't happen again, to me or anyone else." I pulled a sealed envelope from my purse and set it on the table. The name of my attorney printed neatly in the return address corner. "A cease and desist," I said, "effective immediately." Pamela's hand hovered above it, but she didn't touch it. Ricky leaned forward like he might speak, then didn't. I stepped back from the table. No more backdoor conversations, no more stories to family, no more guilt trips. No one stopped me. I left the roast untouched, the tea full, the table full of people who had run out of lies they could hide behind. I didn't even turn around when the door shut behind me. I just kept walking down the front steps, onto the driveway, and back into my car. I sat there for a while, staring out the windshield, my hands motionless on the steering wheel. Not because I was unsure of what I'd done, because I wasn't, but because the silence afterward hurt more than I'd expected. The engine clicked softly as it cooled, a mocking quiet. They didn't chase me. They didn't yell. They didn't apologize. Just sat there, stunned, like I'd done something cruel. I drove home, showered, and let the rest of the evening pass without turning on the TV or checking my phone. The roast smell still clung to my clothes, like fake comfort. I tossed everything into the laundry basket, locked the apartment door behind me, and for once, I didn't dream at all. The next morning, I made coffee and opened my laptop. Nothing from them. No missed calls. Just a lingering bitter taste in my mouth and the sound of my email refreshing. I tried to move on with my day. I really did. I cleaned my desk, organized files, even watered the succulents I usually forgot about. But the stillness was loud and heavy. By late afternoon, I agreed to watch Addison, Darlene's daughter, for a couple hours while she met with someone from her new job agency. Addison was dropped off with her usual hug and tablet in hand. "She's all yours," Darlene chirped from the hallway. "Thanks, sis." Sis. The word landed differently now. While Addison colored quietly at my kitchen table, I sat beside her to check the weather on her tablet. Just for a moment. The screen was already unlocked. A messenger window blinked in the background. Notifications piled in the corner. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The group chat name was Carver Core. It had every name you'd expect: Darlene, Pamela, Ricky, even a cousin or two. At first it was family jokes, memes, baby photos. Then a thread caught my eye. Darlene. She's seriously lost it, like paranoid level nuts. Pamela. She was always sensitive. This is just her being dramatic again. Ricky. Girl gets a good job and thinks she's queen of Idaho. We should have never let her go to college. And then, laughing emojis. From all of them. I sat frozen, scrolling. The messages dated back weeks. Weeks of mockery, while I was breaking inside trying to understand what I'd done wrong. Screenshots. I took them all, quietly, deliberately. My fingers didn't even shake. I locked the tablet and handed it back to Addison, who smiled like nothing in the world was wrong. "They're not who you think they are," I whispered to myself. That evening, I made an appointment. The next morning, I sat across from my lawyer in his downtown office. His glasses rested on the edge of his nose as he read through the documents I handed him. The unauthorized loan, the group chat screenshots, the fake gifts they told people I'd offered. He looked up, brows raised. "You're ready to move forward?" I nodded. "No more warnings. Draft everything." "And the scope?" he asked. "All of them. Ricky, Pamela, Darlene. I want every single name tied to this mess addressed. Fraud, identity misuse, emotional coercion, financial abuse." He closed the folder, leaned back in his chair, and said the first calm thing I'd heard in weeks. "You have a case, and it's airtight." As I stepped out of the building, the early afternoon sun hit me hard. It was too bright for the mood I was in. I stood there for a moment, letting the warmth sting. My phone buzzed. One new text, from Darlene. "Did you seriously just subpoena Mom?" I stared at the screen for a moment, then turned the phone off without replying. I walked down the street and didn't look back. It was 3 days after I walked out of my lawyer's office when the knock came. I wasn't expecting company. I wasn't expecting her. Addison stood at my door, backpack slung over one shoulder, her curls pulled into a messy ponytail, one shoelace dragging behind her. "Hi, Aunt Lorraine," she chirped. "Mom said I'm sleeping over tonight." I blinked. Darlene hadn't texted, hadn't called, just dropped her off. Again. "Did she say when she'd be back?" "Nope," Addison said brightly. "She said I could stay as long as you want me." It wasn't the first time Darlene treated me like unpaid childcare, but this time felt different. Strategic. Like she knew I'd be less likely to take legal steps while babysitting her daughter. I let Addison in. We baked cookies. Watched reruns of the Great British Bake Off. She giggled every time a contestant dropped something. For a moment, it almost felt normal, until it didn't. She held up her tablet while licking a spoon and said casually, "Mom said not to tell you about the iPad." My hand paused over the cookie tray. "What do you mean?" "She said Grandma bought it. But really, Mom got it with the card she keeps hidden. The one she said came from you." My heart stopped. "She also said not to talk about my new phone," Addison added, licking frosting from her finger. "Mom said it's better if you think it's a gift." I stared at her, at that sweet, honest face, and felt my stomach twist. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about shaping a child into a mirror of her mother's lies. That night, when Addison fell asleep on my couch with crumbs on her shirt and Frozen still playing softly in the background, I stood in the kitchen staring at the ceiling. Darlene wasn't just reckless. She was rewriting her daughter's sense of right and wrong. The next morning, I drove straight to my mother's house. Pamela answered the door, surprised to see me. Before she could speak, I said, "Is Darlene here?" She hesitated. "She's in the kitchen." I walked in without waiting for permission. Darlene sat at the counter, sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. "I know what you told Addison." She didn't flinch. "What are you talking about?" "About the iPad, the phone, the credit card. You made her lie to me." Her eyes narrowed. "She doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut, does she?" I stepped closer. "She's 10, Darlene. She's not your shield. She's not your cover story. You're teaching her that lying is how you survive. You're poisoning her." "Don't bring my kid into this," she snapped, voice sharp and low. "You brought her in the moment you dragged her into your web of lies." Pamela stepped between us, hands raised. "Girls, this isn't helping anything." I turned to her. "It should help, but you're still pretending this isn't serious." Ricky emerged from the hallway, already defensive. "This is all going too far. You're breaking this family over some cash and bad choices." "You don't get to use the word family," I said, shaking. "Not after what you did with my name. Not after you laughed at me behind my back. Not after Darlene weaponized her own daughter." Pamela's voice cracked. "Lorraine, this is family." "No," I said, stepping back, voice cold and steady. "This is abuse, and I'm done pretending it's not." I handed Pamela a document, another notice. Final. Legal. Binding. "This was filed 2 days ago. All 3 of you are named. What happens next is no longer my decision. It's in the court's hands." Darlene's face paled for the first time. "I swear you're acting like we killed someone," she whispered. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. As I turned to leave, I looked back at her one last time. "If they won't stop you," I said, "the court will." She didn't move. Neither did Pamela. Ricky folded his arms, but for once said nothing. And as I stepped out into the cold morning air, I realized something powerful. They weren't scared of losing me. Until now. The quiet didn't arrive with fireworks or fanfare. It didn't come in the form of an apology, a confrontation, or even a last-ditch effort to guilt me back into place. It just happened. Like a light slowly dimming in a room I no longer wanted to be in. It had been 2 weeks since I walked out of my mother's house for what I told myself, what I knew, was the last time. I hadn't packed much, just a duffel bag, my documents, and my dignity, which, up until that moment, had been chipped away piece by piece for years. I didn't slam the door, I didn't look back, I didn't give them the satisfaction of a final argument. I simply left. And then came the silence, not peaceful, Not relieving. Not at first. It was the kind of silence that presses against your chest in the middle of the night and asks, "What now?" No missed calls. No voicemails laced with that performative hurt my mother was so good at faking. No vague texts from my father pretending like he didn't know why I was upset. Just absence. Like they had collectively decided I no longer existed. I thought I was prepared for backlash, a barrage of accusations, maybe even a visit at work or a letter in the mail accusing me of tearing the family apart. I braced myself for emotional blackmail, for teary, "How could you do this?" messages from my sisters. But the silence? That was something else entirely. It wasn't just quiet. It was calculated. It took me a few days to understand it for what it was: punishment. This was their way of showing me what life without them looked like, their way of reminding me who had the power. But what they didn't realize was that this silence, this vast, echoing emptiness, wasn't hurting me the way they thought it would. If anything, it was clarifying. Every evening I came home from work, kicked off my heels by the door, and slipped into something soft and loose. I'd light a candle, brew tea, open my laptop and check the latest updates from my lawyer. I was neck deep in the legal mess left behind, untangling the web of lies they'd spun with my name on credit applications, my signature forged on loan agreements, my financial reputation used and discarded like an old receipt. It was exhausting. But it was mine. My fight. My choice. Then one afternoon, as I was clearing out my spam folder, half focused, half bored, I saw it. Subject: "For what it's worth from Marcy, my cousin, the quiet one, the one who always kept her eyes low during family dinners, who never raised her voice, never rocked the boat." I clicked before I could overthink it. "Lorraine, I don't expect a reply, but I want you to know, you did the right thing. I've watched this family chew you up for years. They never saw you as a person, just a provider. Watching you finally stand up wasn't just brave. It gave me permission to rethink my silence too. Whatever they say about you now, I know the truth." I read it once, then again, then a third time, and I broke. Not out of rage, not from pain, but from the relief of being seen, of someone finally naming the thing I'd carried for so long. I cried like I hadn't in years. Not the hot, panicked sobbing of someone in crisis. It was quieter than that, like a letting go, like exhaling after holding your breath too long. A few days later, I got a letter from the bank. My name had been officially removed from the fraudulent loan my father opened. Another letter arrived the next morning. An internal investigation had been launched into Darlene's, my sister's, accounts. Suspicious transfers. Duplicate beneficiaries. My mother's name appeared in the case file notes. Willful omission, they called it. She knew. Of course she knew. And still, not a word, not a call, not even an attempt to justify it. I thought that would be the most painful part. The betrayal, the exposure, the way the truth unraveled in front of strangers in suits with clipboards. But no, the hardest part was their complete lack of remorse. They didn't deny it. They just dismissed me. Like I was the one who'd done something unforgivable. One night, I found myself sitting cross-legged on the floor of my apartment, a half-empty glass of wine beside me, sorting through old photo albums I'd brought with me but never opened. Snapshots of what used to be, birthdays, Christmas mornings. My niece in a pumpkin costume, her gummy grin making me laugh despite myself. I didn't throw them out. I wasn't angry like that anymore, but I didn't need them close either, so I slid them gently into a box, taped it shut, and placed it in the back of my closet. I wasn't erasing the past. I just wasn't going to carry it with me anymore. That Sunday, I woke early. The kind of early where the sky is still gray, and the world hasn't decided what kind of day it's going to be yet. I brewed coffee, pulled a blanket around my shoulders, and stepped out onto my small porch. The breeze was cool. The trees swayed lazily. A few birds chirped like they didn't have a care in the world. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of anyone else's expectations. No demands, no guilt, no tightrope to walk, just me. I took a deep breath, let it fill my lungs, and whispered into the quiet, "You can't miss what was never real." Behind me from the kitchen, my phone buzzed. A single new voicemail, from Pamela. I didn't rush to play it, let it wait. For once, I wasn't the one chasing closure. 3 months later, I was somewhere new. Not just geographically, though technically I'd crossed state lines, but emotionally, mentally, entirely. Eugene, Oregon wasn't all that different from Boise on paper. Similar weather, similar landscape. The same kind of trees, the same overcast skies that hinted at rain without ever quite delivering. But the air felt different here. Not just cleaner, but quieter. Like it had decided not to carry other people's expectations anymore. The street I lived on was unremarkable in the best way. Rows of small houses, neighbors who waved but didn't pry, and trees lining the sidewalks that had just begun to shed their golden leaves. I watched them fall from my second-story apartment window most mornings, slow and steady, like the world itself was learning how to let go, and maybe, in some way, it was. I worked out of a small co-working space just 2 blocks away. Nothing fancy. White walls, too many plants, and a playlist that alternated between lo-fi beats and soft acoustic covers of songs no one wanted to admit they still liked. There was a coffee shop across the street, and within 2 weeks, the baristas already knew my name and my order. Oat milk latte, no syrup. Life had become simple in a way I never thought was allowed. My mornings were no longer filled with passive-aggressive text messages or frantic phone calls. No last-minute errands for someone else's mess. No drama dressed up as obligation. Instead, I woke up to sunlight crawling through my curtains. I stretched. I breathed. I made breakfast slowly. I worked without dread. I ended my days without needing to brace for an emotional ambush. But not every day was light. Some mornings still came with a strange, hollow ache. Not panic. Those days were over. And not fear, exactly. It was softer than that. Like a healed wound remembering the shape of the knife. That morning, the air was cold enough to make me reach for a sweatshirt. I poured a second cup of coffee, then stood still for a moment. The world was quiet. But inside, something stirred. And that's when I remembered it. The voicemail. The one I never played. I hadn't deleted it. I hadn't forgotten it, not really. I just postponed it. Buried it in a drawer with old receipts and half-used notebooks. But now, for some reason, I needed to hear it. Not for closure, just to stop wondering. I sat on the edge of the bed, the ceramic mug warming my fingers, and unlocked my phone. There it was, buried under newer messages from utilities and newsletters I never read. I pressed play. Pamela's voice came through, quiet, hesitant, like she didn't trust herself to say what she needed to. Lorraine, I didn't know it would go this far. We never meant to hurt you, we always assumed you'd be there. You always were. A pause. Not long. Just enough space for me to realize she wasn't calling to apologize. Your sister's not doing well. This has all been hard. Can't we just stop this? There it was. Not remorse. Not even recognition. Just a gentle nudge back toward silence. Toward pretending. I didn't hesitate. I hit delete. The sound it made, a single clean click, was more satisfying than I expected. Like shutting a door. Like locking it. Like finally choosing not to let someone back in. Later that week, a plain white envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. The handwriting on the front was tidy, careful, not familiar. Inside, a check for $1,200 and a small folded note. I know we've never spoken much, but I saw what happened. You stood up when the rest of us shut up. Years ago, you paid for things my brother should have handled. I never said thank you, so here's a piece of it. Late. You were brave. Kelly, Darlene's ex-husband's sister. I held the check between my fingers, stunned. Not by the money, though it was generous, but by the word, brave. No one in my family had ever used that word about me. I was always responsible, reliable, selfish when I stopped being those things. But brave? That felt like the truth finally finding its voice. I didn't deposit the check right away. I left it on the windowsill above my kitchen sink, where the sun could fade the ink a little more each day. It wasn't about the money. It was about the fact that someone had seen the price I'd paid and acknowledged it. That night, I sat at my desk with a blank sheet of paper. Not typing, not texting, just a pen and the page. I didn't address it to anyone. Not my mother. not Pamela, not even Kelly. I wrote it for myself. You don't owe silence to anyone who harms you, not even if they share your last name, not even if they once tucked you in at night. You have every right to leave. You are not a villain for protecting your peace. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the drawer of my nightstand, not as a keepsake, as a reminder. Later, I stepped out onto my small balcony with a mug of tea. The sky was turning that deep lavender shade right before it gives in to night, the kind of dusk that makes everything feel possible. I stood there, wrapped in a sweater, the steam rising in lazy spirals from my cup. No noise, no tension, no need to explain myself, just stillness. I sipped slowly, letting the warmth settle into my chest. No regrets, no revenge, just release. And then, as the rooftops blurred into silhouette and the last light sank below the trees, I whispered something I hadn't dared to say out loud. Not until now. I didn't lose a family. I lost a cage. And as I watched the breeze move through the trees like a quiet tide, I let the final thread of guilt unravel and disappear into the wind. Some people think family means forever. I used to believe that too, but here's what I've learned. Being related doesn't give someone the right to harm you. Love without respect is just control wrapped in guilt, and silence, no matter how noble it feels at first, only teaches others how far they can push you. I didn't walk away because I stopped loving them. I walked away because I started loving myself more. To anyone watching who's ever felt like a doormat for family, or been told to just let it go, you're not wrong for drawing a line. Boundaries are not betrayal, they're survival. And if this story hit something in you, maybe a memory, maybe a wound, I want you to know this. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to choose yourself. Even if it means walking alone for a while, it's better than walking wounded forever. Now, let me ask you something real. Have you ever had to choose peace over family? Do you believe loyalty has limits? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And if this story touched you even just a little, hit that 1 in the comments so I know you felt it too. And hey, if you want more stories like this, more moments that make you think, feel, and maybe even heal a little, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. Hi, I'm Isolde. My sister uninvited me to her wedding. Said I wasn't really family. But that wasn't the worst part. Worse was how they still asked me to pay for the wedding. How they used a lullaby my mother sang just to make it theirs. How my dad told the neighbors I ruined it all, just to save face. They erased me with a smile, a soft tone, a polite exclusion that cut sharper than hate. And yet, they still expected my silence. What would you have done? I didn't expect anything special that Saturday afternoon. The sun filtered lazily through the curtains of my small apartment in Richmond, casting golden squares on the hardwood floor. I was curled up on the love seat, cradling my tea in both hands, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. The stillness, the quiet, it was comforting. For once, everything felt settled. At 30, I wasn't chasing dreams anymore. I had a decent career designing interiors for homes I couldn't afford to live in. I had 2 close friends who never asked too many questions, and I had carved out a version of peace where I didn't expect anything from the people who shared my blood, especially not my father's new family. Then, while scrolling through Instagram stories, a name popped up. Erin, my old college roommate. We hadn't talked in months, maybe a year, but she was still following some of the same people from my past. And there it was, her story playing on loop, a video of women laughing around a table, champagne flutes clinking, balloons spelling out, bride-to-be. In the middle of it, dressed in white lace and wearing a tiara, was my half-sister, Nadine. Text over the video read, "Bridal brunch with the bride-to-be # Nadine Voss wedding." I stared at the screen, thumb frozen above the phone. My heartbeat stuttered, just for a moment. A wedding? Her wedding? I hadn't received a call. No email, no, "Hey, just so you know." Nothing. Not even a forwarded invite that got lost in the mail. I locked my phone and set it face down on the coffee table. For a while I just sat there, my chest tightening like someone had laced invisible ropes around it and started to pull. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was a party for someone else. Maybe... I opened the phone again and typed a message to Dad. Hi, just saw something about Nadine's bridal shower. Is she getting married? The message showed as delivered. No response. I waited an hour, then 2. By the time the sun dipped behind the line of rooftops across the street, my screen was still blank. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. That night, lying in bed with the lights off, I thought about every single dinner I had been left out of, every birthday I didn't know about until weeks later, every Sunday call that turned short the moment Marjorie's voice was heard in the background. And now, this. The next morning, I texted a former coworker, who happened to be distantly connected to Marjorie's circle. She replied within minutes. Oh yeah, Nadine's getting married next month. Didn't you know? Thought everyone did. No, everyone didn't. I didn't. I could have left it there. I could have swallowed the bitterness like I always did and kept my head down. But something cracked. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was something quieter, like disbelief turning into a slow burn. 3 days later, a text popped up. It was from Nadine. Don't worry about the wedding. You're not invited. You're not really family, Isolde. I didn't breathe. I reread it 3 times. You're not invited. You're not really family. I sat in silence. My tea had gone cold. The walls of my apartment felt tighter somehow, pressing in like I didn't belong in my own skin. How could someone say that like it was a weather update? Not a single sorry, not a question, just deletion. I stood up slowly and walked to my bookshelf. On the top was a photo frame, one I hadn't touched in years. My mother's face smiled back at me, that slight, knowing smile she always wore when she knew something I didn't. Her dark curls framed her soft eyes, the same eyes I carried in my own reflection. I whispered, Did you see this coming, Mom? My voice cracked at the end. I didn't cry, not yet, but I felt it, something hollowing out in my chest, like someone had scooped out everything soft and left behind something hard and brittle. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept turning back memories like flipping pages in a book I didn't want to finish. Nadine was 5 when Dad brought her and Marjorie into our house. I was 15 and numb from losing Mom barely a year before. Nadine used to crawl into my bed and beg for bedtime stories. I'd hold her until she fell asleep with her thumb still in her mouth. I bought her birthday presents with my babysitting money. I taught her how to braid her own hair. When she fell off her bike, it was me who sat on the curb and cleaned her scraped knees, while Dad looked for the nearest pharmacy. I remembered the way she used to whisper, "Sissy," and hug my waist like I was her whole world. And now, I was not family. I reached into the drawer beside my bed and pulled out an old notebook, the one Mom used to write recipes in. It still smelled faintly like vanilla and cinnamon. Inside the front cover, she had written in cursive, "The family you build matters more than the one you're born into." Back then, I thought she meant the future, a husband, kids, a home of my own. Now, I wondered if she meant survival, emotional survival. I closed the book and turned off the lamp. In the dark, I stared at the ceiling. Am I really that easy to erase? Maybe I was, or maybe they were just too comfortable thinking I'd never say otherwise. The morning after Nadine's message, I didn't move for a long time. My phone lay face down on the kitchen counter, still vibrating occasionally from work notifications I wasn't ready to face. I wasn't sad, at least not in the way people expect. It was something else. Something that felt like acid under the skin, not enough to scream, just enough to make everything feel wrong. I went through the motions that week: shower, work, coffee, reply to emails, pretend to listen during design consultations, smile when the client asked, "Do you have siblings?" and feel that tiny sting behind the ribs as I said, "Yes, a half-sister." I didn't tell them we hadn't spoken properly in years. On Friday night, I was cleaning up dishes after a sad excuse for dinner when my phone rang. Not a text, not an email, a real call. The screen lit up with one name, Dad. I hesitated. Clive and I didn't talk much. Not since he married Marjorie. Not since I stopped pretending I was okay being a background character in their family highlight reel. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. "Hi." He cleared his throat. Hey, Izzy. How are you, sweetheart? Sweetheart. That word hadn't passed his lips in a decade. I leaned against the counter. I'm fine. There was a long pause, a clink of ceramic, maybe his coffee mug. Listen, I wanted to ask you something. It's not about you and Nadine. I know there's tension, but this is bigger than that. It's about family. Here we go. What is it? I asked. Well, he exhaled. Marjorie's been organizing everything for the wedding, and you know how expensive venues are these days. The florist needs a deposit. Nadine's dress, it's custom. And with your career doing so well, we thought maybe if you could help out a little? I blinked, stunned silent. You're asking me to pay for a wedding I wasn't even invited to? It's not like that, he said quickly. You're still family, Izzy. This is just one of those times family steps up. The laugh that came out of me was bitter, dry. You mean like how you stepped up for me when Mom died? Or when you decided I didn't belong in your new family unit? Don't twist this, he said sharply. It's about support, not revenge. My hand clenched tighter around the phone. So I'm good enough to bankroll your daughter's big day, but not good enough to sit in the audience? She's emotional. You know how brides are. Right. Emotional. Like that explained anything. I'm going to stop you right there, I said, voice low. If this is the kind of family I'm supposed to support, I think I'll pass. Before he could respond, I hung up. I stood in the silence of my apartment, still holding the phone. The rage didn't hit all at once. It slid in slow, deliberate, like ink bleeding into fabric. I put the phone down gently, afraid I'd throw it. Then it buzzed, a notification from Aaron with a caption, "Girl, check this out." Attached was a screenshot of a group chat. The title bar read, Voss Wedding Core Inside, a series of messages. Marjorie. We still need someone to cover the flower deposit. Ask Isolde. Don't bring up the invite thing, it'll just make it messy. Clive. She'll probably say yes if we spin it like helping Nadine. Nadine. Whatever. Just tell her it's about family. She'll bite. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until my lungs burned. I read the messages twice, 3 times. Not one person said my name with affection. Not one message acknowledged that I might feel something. I wasn't a sister. I wasn't a daughter. I was a transaction. That was the word that echoed in my skull as I stood by the window. Transaction. Later that night, I pulled my journal from the nightstand drawer, the one Mom gave me for my 16th birthday. Most of the pages were blank, except for a few scribbled entries when I thought writing might save me from losing my mind. I opened to a fresh page and wrote, They want me for what I can give, not for who I am. I miss you, Mom. They don't even pretend anymore. I paused, pen hovering above the paper. I think you knew this would happen. You always knew who they were. You just didn't want to say it out loud. I sat there with the pen still in hand long after I stopped writing. The room was dark now, the only light a soft glow from the street lamp outside. I didn't cry. Again. It wasn't about tears anymore. I felt removed, like I'd finally stepped outside the burning house and realized I never had to walk back in. But the cruelest thing wasn't what they asked. It was how normal they made it sound. It had been nearly 2 weeks since the last call, since I heard my father try to spin guilt into a favor and frame absence as love. The silence that followed was, strangely, easier than I expected. They didn't reach out again. No one did, not even Nadine. So I filled my time with client work, project proposals, coffee runs, and pretending I still wanted to engage with a world that didn't know the version of me that was unraveling under the surface. But the silence didn't last. Late one Friday afternoon, just after wrapping up a consultation with a couple remodeling their kitchen, I got a text from Aaron. You're gonna want to see this. Attached was a live stream link from a mutual acquaintance, someone I hadn't seen or heard from since college. My thumb hovered over the link for a moment before I gave in. The video loaded with background chatter and elegant floral arrangements surrounding an outdoor patio strung with fairy lights. I saw tables dressed in soft pastels and a small group gathering by a makeshift dance floor. Someone in a tuxedo stepped forward, holding out his hand. It was my father. Then I saw her. Nadine in a white lace gown, smiling like every camera in the world was trained on her. She reached for his hand, and they stepped into position under the string lights. The music started, and my heart stopped. Moon River. That song didn't belong to her. It wasn't some wedding cliché or a romantic oldie picked off a playlist. It was ours. Mine and Mom's. The lullaby she'd hum every single night, even when she was too tired to finish a verse. It was the sound of warmth when the world was cruel, the melody that lived in the walls of my childhood bedroom long after she passed. I hadn't heard it in 15 years. I couldn't bring myself to, not once, until now. And here it was, floating out of speakers at a wedding I wasn't welcome at, the soundtrack to a moment I should have never seen. I didn't realize I had sat down, collapsed, onto the floor until my knee hit the edge of the coffee table. The live stream continued. Nadine spun slowly, leaning into our father like she had known that song all her life, like it had been hers. But it wasn't. I ended the stream and stared at the dark screen, my reflection twisted in the glossy surface. My stomach churned, cold and tight, as something dawned on me, something that felt like a slap across memory itself. I got up, walked over to my bookshelf, and pulled out the old binder that held scanned copies of Mom's things, recipes, poems, pages from her journals. I had kept them digital, knowing the originals were packed away somewhere I didn't have access to, somewhere Marjorie had claimed as her territory years ago. Flipping through the PDF printouts, I reached the final page. The last entry, Mom's handwriting soft and cursive but fading slightly. If Nadine ever asks about this song, tell her it's not hers. This was our lullaby. A coldness settled into my spine. I hadn't read that note in so long, but now it pulsed like a siren in my chest. How did Nadine even know that song meant something? How did she know to pick that song for that dance? There was only one answer. Marjorie. She had the originals. She had access to Mom's personal journals. She must have given the song to Nadine. Or worse, planted the idea, knowing what it would do to me if I ever found out. This wasn't coincidence. It wasn't some innocent mistake. It was deliberate, surgical. They didn't just cut me out of their lives. They reached into mine and pulled out a piece that still had Mom's fingerprints on it and twisted it into a stage prop. I sat still for a long time. No tears came. There was no room for them. I felt stripped of something I hadn't even realized I was still clinging to. This wasn't about invitations anymore. This wasn't about brunches or bridal showers or polite exclusions. This was memory theft, emotional vandalism. I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. This was the last line. You just crossed it. I stood up slowly, walked into the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady, too steady. I brought my laptop to the table, opened a new document, and started typing. Not an email, not a rant, just a list. A list of every time they blurred the boundary between family and fraud. Every manipulation, every dig disguised as care, every omission framed as keeping the peace. For the first time in years, I started writing down what I'd do if they ever pushed again. The next morning, my list still sat open on the laptop screen, the cursor blinking patiently at the end of the last line. I hadn't added anything new since midnight, but I couldn't bring myself to close it either. Somehow, just having it there, a living document of every invisible bruise, felt like armor. Then my inbox pinged. The subject line read, "Regarding your possible presence." It was from Marjorie. Not "Dear Isolde" or "We'd love to have you there." Just those 4 words, clinical and cold. I clicked. "If you do insist on attending, please coordinate your outfit accordingly. We suggest beige, champagne, or dusty blue. It's Nadine's day, and she's asked that there be no visual distractions. Thank you." No invitation. No RSVP link. Just wardrobe instructions. As if I were a background extra in a production I never auditioned for. I actually laughed. Loud, sharp, empty. Not out of humor, but because the absurdity of it all had finally tipped over into something surreal. They hadn't asked if I was coming. They hadn't said I was welcome. But if I did show up, I was to wear something that made sure I faded into the wallpaper. Later that evening, I called Dad. His voice picked up after 3 rings. "Isolde? I got an email from Marjorie." A pause. "Ah, right. Well, she wanted to give you a heads up, just in case you were thinking of coming. Just in case, I repeated flatly. Okay, so where would I be seated then? He cleared his throat. It's a tight arrangement this year. The family section's already full, but we could get you a nice spot near the back. Still good view of the stage and not near family, though. Well, he trailed off. Nadine was really particular about the seating. You know how brides are. There it was again. That infuriating phrase, as if emotional manipulation became acceptable the moment you strapped on a veil. I see, I said. So let me get this straight. I'm not invited, but I'm allowed to show up as long as I wear the right color, sit far enough away, and don't ruin the aesthetic? It's not about that. It's about avoiding drama. We want to keep things peaceful. Peaceful. I could almost feel the irony dripping through the speaker. I'm sure you do, I said, and hung up. I didn't feel peace. I felt fire building behind my ribs. 2 days later, Erin forwarded me a message she'd gotten from one of her old styling contacts. Someone hired for Nadine's wedding. A forwarded screenshot. I braced myself. For Isolde's look, please avoid white, red, or anything with embellishment. Nothing that might outshine the bride. She should look appropriately reserved. Understated? Understated. That was the word they used. I wasn't even on the guest list, yet they had already assigned me a visual perimeter. Be neutral, be quiet, be invisible. I replied to Erin, not even invited, but still expected to look invisible. She texted back, this is next level unhinged. Later that night, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, holding a dress I hadn't worn in years. It was deep burgundy, the color of old wine and unsaid things. Mom had worn it to her last wedding anniversary dinner with Dad. After she passed, I kept it wrapped in tissue paper, tucked away in a box like it might vanish if exposed to air too long. I slipped it on. It fit a little tighter around the waist. The shoulders sat sharper than I remembered, but it made me feel something I hadn't in months, rooted. I studied myself in the reflection, brushing a hand over the velvet curve of the dress. If they wanted quiet, I said aloud, they should have treated me like I mattered. And just like that, the countdown began, not to their wedding, but to my reckoning. A week passed. I didn't reply to Marjorie's dress code suggestion, and I hadn't spoken to Clive since that shallow conversation about seating. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd take the hint and leave me alone. They didn't. The message came on a Tuesday morning, sandwiched between work emails and a reminder about my dental appointment. It was from Nadine. Hey, we're still short on funds for the honeymoon. Can you help? No greeting, no explanation, no acknowledgement of the ghost she made me into. I stared at the screen, mouth slightly open, as if the words might shift into something rational if I just gave them time. But they didn't. They stayed as they were, clean, transactional, dismissive. I typed, then paused, deleted, then finally wrote, Depends. Am I still not invited? The typing bubbles appeared instantly. This isn't about that. It's about family helping family. That word again, family. I didn't answer. By mid-afternoon, she sent a Google spreadsheet labeled honeymoon budget. Line items included 5-star resort in the Maldives, spa package, private villa, business class tickets, luxury cruise extension, estimated cost, north of $14,000. No thank you. No, this means the world to us. Just a polished list of entitlement. I scrolled through the spreadsheet, deadpan. A part of me wondered if she'd even considered how absurd it looked, asking the sister she publicly disowned to finance her tropical escape. I typed again. So, I'm good enough to fund your future, but not worthy of being part of your present? Her response came back almost immediately, like she'd been rehearsing it. It's not personal, Isolde. It's about what feels right. You and I, we're just different people now, but this is still family stuff. I reread that line 3 times. Not personal. The irony was bitter enough to taste. That night, I curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, trying to pretend my blood hadn't just turned colder. Erin texted me around 10, her message filled with nothing but a shocked emoji and a link to an Instagram story. I clicked. It was Nadine. Mid-conversation at what looked like a backyard wine night with her friends. Music playing low in the background. She held a drink, laughing. No, seriously, she has no kids, no husband, no real life. Her money's like the only thing she's got. I figured she might as well use it for something fun. The girls around her laughed. One of them even added, "Better than letting it sit in a bank, right?" And then they clinked glasses like it was some kind of joke only privileged hearts could understand. I sat still. Not angry, not surprised. Just hollow. I didn't replay the video. I didn't show Aaron my reaction. I just closed the app and stared at the ceiling. There are moments where grief stops being dramatic, stops being about sobbing or yelling or pacing in circles, and instead becomes this low, constant buzz under your skin, like you're mourning someone who died and is still walking around. That's what it felt like with Nadine. I wasn't losing her now. I had already lost her, and maybe she was never mine to begin with. The next morning I sent one final message. The answer is no. You said I'm not family, remember? And then, for the first time, I blocked her number. It felt anticlimactic at first, just a silent click, and she was gone from my inbox. But something shifted after that. It was the first time I'd ever drawn a real line, not hinted, not retreated quietly, not swallowed my pride for the sake of peace. A full, unapologetic, deliberate no. For once I wasn't trying to make things better. I was protecting what was left of me. But drawing lines in the sand only works until someone dares to cross it. The morning after I blocked Nadine, I made a single phone call. It was to the event coordinator I had originally spoken to months ago, when Clive and Marjorie casually mentioned they were short on funds, and I, like a fool, offered to help. The woman answered on the second ring. "This is Lindsay, with Magnolia Events." "This is Isolde Rayner," I said, calm and level. "I need to withdraw payment under Contract Clause 5B. There was a brief silence on the line, then a rustle of paper. "You're the primary payer for the Voss wedding, correct?" "That's right." "Which portion are you looking to cancel?" "All of it," I replied. "The venue deposit, the catering, the cake, the floral arrangements. Everything covered under my payment authorization." She hesitated. "We're 6 days from the event. I'll need a written confirmation. You'll have it by noon." And she did. I drafted the email with the same clarity I used when designing project proposals. Concise, professional, irrevocable. By noon, all funds were frozen. A single sentence at the bottom of the email sealed it. "Please note this decision is final and non-negotiable." I didn't wait for a response. I simply closed my laptop, made myself a sandwich, and went back to work. Saturday morning. The wedding was supposed to start at noon. The weather was perfect. Blue skies, soft breeze, the kind of day photographers pray for. But the venue was chaos. Aaron sent me a voice memo from across town. "Girl, you will not believe what's happening right now. No food showed up. The cake never came. They were scrambling to find folding tables and Costco sandwiches an hour before guests arrived." I sipped my coffee and said nothing. She added, "Marjorie is losing it, screaming at the staff like they stole her purse. Nadine's crying in the bridal suite, and Clive keeps calling you. He's called me twice already." I didn't respond. An hour later, Aaron forwarded me a screenshot of a group chat that included one of her cousins, someone who worked at the venue. Nadine slapped her mom, screamed something about sabotage, then threw a champagne flute at the wall. Below it, a second message. "She's threatening to sue her own sister, loudly." I turned off notifications and went back to sketching out a shelving concept for a client's home office. The irony wasn't lost on me. While they scrambled to salvage a wedding built on entitlement, I was building something functional for someone who'd actually asked for help. Later that evening, I walked into the local cafe for my usual chai latte. It was quiet, just a couple of tables filled, and I recognized the barista, Jamie. She smiled at me. But just as I was about to place my order, a woman I didn't know turned from the sugar counter and raised an eyebrow. "You're the one who ruined your sister's wedding, right?" she asked, as casually as if she were commenting on the weather. I blinked. "Excuse me?" "She said you pulled the plug on everything, just because she didn't give you a front row seat. That's dramatic." I tilted my head, offering a tight smile. "You mean the sister who told me I wasn't family? That sister?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't respond. I took my chai and walked out without another word. The stories spread like wildfire. Marjorie had already spun her version to the neighbors and the church ladies. Isolde, the bitter spinster, lashing out because she wasn't center stage. I knew how they'd frame it. Jealous, emotional, unstable. It was easier than admitting they'd built their castle on borrowed bricks, and I'd simply taken mine back. I didn't defend myself. Not online, not in person. I didn't call Clive. I didn't reply to the voicemail from Aunt Lydia. I didn't even read the email from Nadine's college roommate asking me to think of the bigger picture. No more explaining, no more context. I was done being everyone's footnote. That Sunday, I took a long walk down Monument Avenue. It was quiet, golden with spring light. I passed families taking graduation photos, runners pacing themselves for the 10K, and a little girl in a white dress chasing a bubble wand. For the first time in weeks, I felt unburdened. I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel shame. I felt power, not the kind that screams to be heard, the kind that simply knows. I'd spent my entire adult life trying to make room for people who would never make room for me. That part of the story was over, but predators don't stay quiet when prey learns to bite back. 2 days after the wedding imploded, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. Not texts this time. A call. My father's name glowed across the screen like a bad omen. I stared at it for a moment before I picked up. No, good morning. No, are you okay? Just his voice, dry, measured, and already defensive. You've humiliated us, Isolde. I blinked at the ceiling, still in bed. Excuse me? You could have said no in a better way. You didn't have to sabotage everything. I sat up slowly. You mean by pulling back money I was never thanked for in the first place? His tone didn't soften. It's not just about money, it's about what it symbolized, and now, look what you've done. Look what I've done? I repeated. There was a pause like he expected me to apologize. Maybe, he continued, you can help make it right by covering Nadine's college tuition. I know it's a lot to ask, but it's the least you could do. I nearly laughed, but it came out like a dry breath. Least for who? He cleared his throat. We're still a family, Isolde. At the end of the day, blood matters. Except mine, I said, and hung up. That afternoon, Aaron sent me a link with no caption. Just a link. I tapped it. It led to a GoFundMe page titled, Help Nadine Recover from Her Ruined Wedding, A Sister's Betrayal. At the top was a photo of Nadine, eyes red, face tilted toward her bouquet like a Greek tragedy mask. The description below made my stomach knot. Nadine has always been a kind, generous soul. Her wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, until her older sister Isolde pulled financial support out of jealousy and left the family in ruins. Isolde was like a second mother to her growing up. But sometimes, jealousy destroys love. I stared at the screen. No, this wasn't real. And yet, there it was, a public crucifixion in pastel fonts. I scrolled further. A list of donations, names I recognized from childhood, neighbors, relatives, co-workers of Marjorie's. Below the donation tally, comments. So sorry this happened to you, Nadine. Isolde used to be sweet. What changed? Tragic family betrayal. I sat still for several minutes. Then the notification buzzed again. A screenshot from Aaron. A Facebook post shared by Aunt Lillian. Some wounds cut deepest when they come from within the family. Please support Nadine. I closed the phone. That night, I stood in front of the mirror. I didn't cry. I just looked at myself, looked through myself. Mom once told me, you don't have to be in pain to prove you belong. I'd spent years mistaking pain for loyalty. I opened my laptop, stared at a blank email draft. For a second, I typed, you have no idea what you're enabling. Then I deleted it. Instead, I opened a new email. And one by one, I typed out short, direct messages to each person who had shared that GoFundMe post. To Aunt Lillian, to Uncle Brent, to Rhonda from across the street. Each message read the same. You know me better than that. Or maybe you never did. I didn't wait for replies. The next morning, I walked to the corner bookstore and bought myself a new notebook. Hardcover. Linen blue, clean slate. When the cashier handed me my change, she smiled and said, This one's sturdy. Good for beginnings. I nodded. That's the point. At home, I made tea and sat by the window. Outside, life went on, dogs pulling leashes, teens filming TikToks, an older couple arguing about where they parked. And I sat with my new notebook. No rage, no revenge, just a line in ink. I do not need to prove what they refused to see. I wasn't at war anymore. I was just not participating, and that felt louder than anything I could have said. But silence wasn't surrender. It was a storm gathering in still air. The air had turned, but it wasn't spring anymore. It was something sharper, thinner. A week after the GoFundMe post, just when the noise seemed to fade, it returned in a different form. Nadine uploaded a carousel of wedding photos to her Instagram. The first image, her in the white dress, beaming beside Clive. The second, a wide-angle shot of the reception with soft lighting, floral arches and champagne flutes raised in frozen toasts. The last, a black-and-white shot of her twirling mid-dance, hair loose, eyes closed like she was the only person in the world who had ever felt joy. The caption read, "Surrounded by love, only true family made it. No drama, just bloodline." Subtle? Maybe to strangers. To me, it was a blade under velvet. My phone pinged twice, first from Erin. "Did you see her latest post? I think this was for you." Second, a screenshot from my coworker Jenna. "Was that shade? Or am I reading into it?" I didn't answer either. I just saved the image. And I sat there for a long time, staring at the final photo, at the way Nadine's head tilted back in perfect elation, as if I had never existed. Later that night, after dinner and dishes and 30 quiet minutes watching a nature documentary with the volume low, my phone buzzed again. An unknown number, no name. The message was short. "You still don't get it. You were never one of us. Keep your money. Keep your pity." No punctuation, no emotion, just poison pretending to be truth. I stared at the words while sitting cross-legged on my living room floor. The only light came from the floor lamp beside the couch, casting long shadows across the rug. In one hand, I held my phone. In the other, a framed photo of Mom, her smile permanent. The corners of her mouth turned like she knew something the rest of us hadn't caught up to yet. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I laughed, a short, cold laugh that surprised even me. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't rage. It was the sound of someone finally done playing a rigged game. I stood up, walked to my desk, and opened the folder labeled College Fund. It had been sitting there for months. Inside, scanned documents, bank approvals, draft transfers. Nadine's name on all of it. I selected the folder, right-clicked, delete. When prompted to confirm, I didn't blink. Then I opened my email and typed 3 lines to Clive. "There will be no tuition from me. You called me family when it was convenient. You made me stranger when it wasn't." I didn't wait for his reply. I blocked his number. Then I blocked Marjorie. Then Nadine. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt intact, like each step was a brick being set into place, building the wall that should have always existed between me and their version of family. The next morning, I woke early. I didn't check my phone. I didn't scroll. I packed a single suitcase, nothing excessive, just what I needed to feel like myself somewhere else. I locked the apartment, dropped the key into the mailbox downstairs, and ordered a car to the airport. No final glance back, no dramatic music swelling in the background, just silence. And in that silence, I felt more free than I had in years. At the gate, I bought a paperback and a bottle of water. The woman behind me in line complimented my scarf. I said thank you and smiled. I didn't mention where I was going. I didn't feel the need to explain why I was leaving. Closure isn't a place, it's a decision, and I had made mine. No more proving, no more begging, no more contorting myself into someone who fit their mold of family. The flight attendant called my boarding group. I rose, gripped the handle of my suitcase, and stepped forward. The sky beyond the windows looked overcast, soft and heavy like a held breath. I exhaled. Maybe the wound wouldn't ever fully close. Maybe there would always be a mark where it used to burn. But I wouldn't keep scratching it open just to feel something. That was the difference now. I didn't need the pain to remind me who I was. I already knew. But even freedom comes with a shadow. And sometimes it still speaks in your mother's voice. 1 month later. The rain in Portland had a different rhythm. Less dramatic than Virginia storms, but steadier. like it knew it had nothing left to prove. I'd been here 3 weeks. A quiet sublet near Alberta Street. The kind of place where people left handwritten signs on their fences that read, "Please take one," over baskets of lemons, used books, or thrifted mugs. I took a ceramics class on Thursdays. Nothing fancy, just clay under my fingernails and a wheel that spun until my thoughts caught up to my hands. Sometimes my pieces collapsed, the walls too thin. Other times they held. I liked that I didn't need everything to stand up perfectly. I started waking early, making coffee before the sun rose. There were no unread messages waiting, no phantom vibrations, no dread when my screen lit up, just a life, uncomplicated and my own. I hung a small piece of fired clay on the front door last weekend. I'd carved 2 words into it with a kitchen knife. I'm enough. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a declaration. It felt like a fact. Erin called me from back home a few days later. She never asked how I was, she just jumped right in. "You're not going to believe this," she said, "but Nadine's asking Clive and Marjorie to sell their Lexus." I blinked. What for? "She burned through the rest of the wedding cash, wants to go back to grad school, says the family owes her one." I leaned against the kitchen counter, pressing the cold ceramic mug to my chest. "And?" "They said no," Erin replied with a short laugh. "Marjorie told her, 'We gave you a wedding, not a lifetime subscription.'" Nadine lost it. Called them selfish, ungrateful, accused Clive of emotionally abandoning her. I didn't say anything. "There's more," she continued. "Someone flagged their GoFundMe, the post's down. Apparently a few neighbors finally spoke up, said it felt shady, like manipulation." I walked to the window, watching a bus pull up at the corner. A teenager climbed off with a giant cello case, struggling to keep it upright. A man in a puffer vest helped her without a word. "The house is quiet now," Erin said softly. "No more strategy meetings, no more group chats, just silence. Clive hasn't mentioned your name in a week." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. It felt like a curtain had closed, not in triumph, but in quiet resignation. I thanked her and hung up. On Saturday, I flew back for one day, not to visit anyone. I brought a small envelope in my carry-on. Inside was a printed copy of a scholarship form, the same form I'd once filled out with Nadine's name, the one I never submitted. I took a cab from the airport straight to the cemetery. Mom's grave sat between 2 birch trees. Someone had placed a sunflower bouquet there recently. Not from me, maybe some neighbor, maybe no one at all. I crouched down and laid the envelope beneath the vase. Then I took out a sprig of dried lavender I'd kept in my bag and rested it across the stone. "I didn't fix them," I whispered, "but I didn't become them either." And somehow, that felt like the answer she would have wanted. I didn't stay long. Back in Portland that evening, I walked to the corner cafe for tea. The barista recognized me now, always called me early bird. The seat by the window was empty, the light warm against the wood-grain table. I pulled out my notebook and flipped past the old pages. Some filled with lists, others just fragments. I didn't need to write today, I just sat. The stillness didn't feel hollow anymore. The next morning, an email popped into my inbox. A local high school invited me to speak at a community session about resilience and selfhood in complex families. I read the message twice, then once more, and then I smiled. Yes, I thought, that I can talk about. Not to point fingers, not to drag names through the dirt, but because maybe somewhere there was a kid sitting in their room wondering if love was something they had to earn. And maybe I could tell them, you are already enough. You are already whole. You don't have to bleed to be seen. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about knowing who you are after everything tries to tell you you're not enough. Looking back now, I don't regret walking away. I used to think love had to look a certain way. Shared blood, last names, matching smiles at dinner tables. But family is who shows up when you're broken, not who breaks you and calls it discipline. I learned the hard way that sometimes peace doesn't come from making things right. It comes from choosing yourself when no one else will. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own home, let me tell you this. You are not the problem. You are not too much. You are not a burden. You are someone who survived a version of love that tried to make you small. And now It's your turn to build the version of family that sees you fully and stays. So, what about you? Have you ever had to walk away from people who claim to love you just to finally breathe? Do you believe family is earned through action, not just blood? Let me know in the comments. If this story spoke to something in you, type 1 or tell me where you're watching from. And hey, if it didn't hit home, tell me why. I want to understand your side too. This space is for all of us. And if you want to hear more stories like this, raw, real, and from the heart, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll never miss what's coming next. Because the truth is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just finally say, I deserve better. Thanks for watching. I see you, I hear you, and I hope you never forget, you're not alone.